movies ever since I was a kid, mimicking primarily Universal monsters. It was always really exciting. Had no idea of looking at it as a craft or anything about money or anything like that. I just like the idea of being able to slip into somebody else's clothes and see what it felt like.
I was not an actress. I came from a dance world, and when they needed the cast, the first cast was going to New York. Part of the first cast, most of the cast was going to New York to be on Broadway. Some of them stayed. Enrique stayed. And so they needed dancers. So my friend, Miguel Delgado, he was the assistant choreographer and played Rafa. He says, audition. And I said, okay. And so I auditioned, and I got in as an understudy and as a dancer.
The most interesting part about this process was we got hired on the premise that we would be willing to go into the barrio and look for unknowns. And I said, you mean the barrio high schools? Because that's what we need. He said, yes. Okay. So we agreed so that we got the job, right? So then I had to go set up meetings with teachers and high schools in East LA to go find real kids, because that's what our passionate director wanted. Mind you, these kids know nothing about acting. And so here is this person giving them things to read and kind of memorize and then come in and do something for us. And I said, okay, they're all so freaked out. I can't do this. Let's try a little improv. Let's pretend you're in class and your teacher comes in. Mm-hmm. Let's see what you would do. They sat there. They didn't want to do anything. They were scared out of their minds. I said, okay, Ramon, this is not working, as you can see. He goes, well, where are those? And he said, where are those actors? I said, they're not here. They're in
And I remember one scene, because it was so humiliating, but I laugh about it now. But I was cooking in the kitchen, so we brought some props. And this is not with Stella. It was to prepare to be seen by Stella. I was coached by Alice Winston. She would rehearse the scenes with us. So I had a carrot stick, and I'm cutting it and cutting it. And this is a rehearsal because Alice was really kind of mean. So just scared to be like eviscerated. I remember being tense, and I'm cutting the carrots, and the carrots are flying off the stage, flying. And Alice was like, the prop does not lie. That is not correct. The way you're using the prop. And it's true, the prop doesn't lie. And I'm just trying to cut it. I should have boiled it first. But yeah, it was just so many life lessons, like really fundamentals that you can carry with you forever, not just situational to the scene.
I worked with this guy who my wife and I used to watch when I was an air traffic controller. I won't mention his name, but he would...
On film.
Yeah, and they'd say, cut. They said, Jay, you got to pick up your cue. I said, my cue? I didn't hear anything. Okay, shot it again, and I couldn't hear my cue line. So I asked the first AD, I said, look, I can't hear my cue line. I said, how do I pick up my cue? He said, watch him. When his lips stop moving.
There you go.
Say you're alive. So,
that's how you learn.
No, that was that situation. I didn't have a problem cutting it down, but I, just sometimes talking in normal voice. It's gone even one step further than it was then. Now everybody is talking like this. It's a whisper.
I started my company called V Shades. While I was using my Instagram, I was posting about all these great TV shows that I was watching because I'm a TV/pop culture addict. That's a personal thing. Once I was doing that, I just kind of felt like, this is great for them, but what about my thing? Like, what do I get really out of this? And so when I thought about what product I would use, I felt like it had to be something that I use every day, which are shades. I wear shades every day. I actually started wearing them in 2008. That's when I added them to my wardrobe. And so now I cannot wear another pair of shades. I only wear V shades.
That's
it's
awesome.
my life.
So I love these shades. I'm wearing Hella by V Shades. Okay.
It's part of the California collection.
Hella by V Shades.
A lot of people will want them to say, be you, be who you are. And sometimes when you're so young, you don't even know who you are. Like now I'm going deep into my 40s and 50s, and I know who I am, which is why I'm working on Virginia Woolf, why I'm working on parts in little films that I've never done before. I look really unattractive.
You're retuning your branding.
I don't think of it as like that because I want to stay in the art. when I do that. It's really important for me to divorce the art from the business. So I see it as me growing as an artist. Because if I don't have fun and I don't feel like an artist and everything feels like it's this job branding, then it's not fun for me. So now I'm just finding out who I am as an older person. Now, when I'm done with the movie, I call up the director and I say, hey, thank you for this was a great experience. If you need me to do anything, I'm in. I have this much social media. I just got this big movie come out. I can help you with this. I have a publicist. I have an assistant. This is what I'm doing. What do you need me to do? I'm there for you. And I make sure they know. Or if it's a bigger movie, I call the publicist on the film and say, this is who I am. And if you need me, I'm there. And I just keep showing up.
Someone was talking to me about branding yesterday, for her Instagram and using all her colors for all the stuff.
Yes.
Like to brand yourself and stuff. It's great.
It's that
This
specific.
is so good. Now I'll show you a fashion don't because I want you to see. Here. Let's look at this one. This was so good on our two lovely earlier models. Watch this. No. It's so flat. It makes the skin tone more yellow. You just melt into the color. Whereas here, shade of color.
Yes.
No change in makeup. No change in anything.
Gorgeous.
Awesome. Now, also, we were talking about changing your hair color because you do that.
Yes.
You do different hair, wigs and extensions or
Absolutely.
whatever. So that's where you use this to make another hair color work. That's why it's so much fun. It's not like you are these colors and you can never veer, If you change your hair color drastically, like if you became, like right now, like Jess, like that honey blonde, then the colors would change up.
The first stand-up I ever did was at San Diego State on their amateur night. I did it twice there. The first time I did it, it went okay. The second time I did it was so bad that they turned off the light and the mic. And the only laugh I got is when I said, he did say comedian, didn't he? But as I walked around the campus that week, people saw and would encourage me, go, hey man, I saw your thing. It was great. Hang in there, blah, blah, blah. But then the Comedy Store opened in Pacific Beach, wasn't in La Jolla yet. So I went down there and I got on the amateur night. There was only 2 amateurs in town at that time in 1976. And it went just like I had it in my head. All the laughs are right there. And then that's when I realized it's the venue. You got to be at the proper venue.
When you're on set with your kid when they're small, they already know that they're cute. They already know that they can get away with anything, so they're going to be as bratty as they want to be. I would say, Chelsea, Mommy's going to the ladies' room. I will be right back. Mommy always comes back. Or I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. I'll be right back. Mommy will be right back. And I would go and I'd hide behind a bush or hide behind a wall and watch everything. And then when the director or the photographer would work with her, she'd work with her. No problem at all. If I was there, then she'd act bratty. So I learned early on, Mom needs to be out of the way.
Paying attention, but not letting them see you.
Oh, definitely pay attention. You have to see everything. You have to hear everything. There always has to be like an open door. Most parents think, oh, no, I don't want to mess up my chances. That's your baby.
So I thought, well, like the docu, it could be Chicano history and gay history as a Latino, which is the whole other thing going forward.
Right.
And so actually it's because I had that dry spell where my TV career, I never even had a resume. The phone would just ring because I was it. You wanted somebody who could really produce a Latino product? That was me. So I was the only game in town. And it just kind of dried up, and that's why I decided to write the show. And so I started by having 2 lists, and because it's all storytelling. It's all true stories. First time I realized I was something called a Mexican. First time I realized I was gay. First time I felt, marginalized as a Mexican. And it's again, they all had stories attached to them. And then I started to mix the stories up. And that's how Gay Tina was born.
When you come to Hollywood, because everybody's trying to make a buck on you, if they're interested, they start trying to fix you. Just because you didn't book doesn't mean you didn't do a great reading. So the agents, the managers, they try to fix you. And they're going to send you over here. You need that. Oh my God, you need that. You need that comedy class. You need that improv class. And before you know it, the person doesn't know who the hell they are anymore. They've lost their support group that really believed in them because they don't have the spine or the conviction to say, no, I like what I'm doing. I like the work I'm putting out there. I'm working with so-and-so. First, find out what you're selling, what is the real core of who you are, and the first place you're going to play, the first kind of role you're going to play. And when we were growing up, there were things that were much more typed. You had the leading man, the character man. Yeah, you had all those types. It's a little different now because it's so unconventional now how they cast, and it could go many ways. And in many ways, it's great that there's so many, the diversity, and they, what was this way now is that way, and it's great. First, we're going to build that foundation, right? And then we can start to stretch and go here and go there. My father worked all the time, and when we first came out here, I remember producers were calling him. My father wasn't a blue-collar man, but he found his niche being blue-collar. He worked on it. And that's what opened doors, and people would call and say, hey, remember when you did that scene in Lee's? I'm producing such and such. I want you to come and guest on the show, like Hill Street Blues or what have you. And I think that's, so I think one, to really have the conviction in yourself, but don't lie to yourself. I have more actors that don't know who they are. I say, so who do you identify with on the screen? And they come back with the craziest names, and I've got to be honest. I said, do you really think you have that to offer? Sometimes they are so wonderfully offbeat that if they would embrace that offbeat and stop trying to be Tom Cruise, they're going to make $1 million.
It was good in a sense because, like I said, there was a market. I mean, business-wise, if you're a club owner and you're in the middle of the San Gabriel Valley, where you're surrounded by Latinos and you don't have any Latinos on your show, something's wrong. So when they realized that, and us, we show up with everybody. It's like a wedding. You invite you and other people to come with you. So yeah, it was cool. It was great. And then celebrities started popping in because we had so many people. So celebrity
because the rooms were always hot
Yeah.
and are always hot. Yes.
And they would be popping in, and people you never thought would. Roseanne popped in, Louis Anderson. I mean, I'm not dropping names, but I'm saying people of that caliber were showing up. And what are you doing here on a Tuesday? I said, well, this room is hot, man. So I said, yeah, it is, So we would do that, man, and it's been great.
I was in Red Surf with George Clooney, and I remember thinking, they said, you're a Cuban drug lord. And I go, what does that mean? Well, Cuban drug lord is the biggest drug lord around. These guys, I said, why? Because he's salsas? I mean, what's it? And then
Didn't you see Scarface?
Did you see Scarface? Just shot in California, and I'm like, why? All right, I'm a Cuban drug lord in Compton for some odd reason, working with surfers with George Clooney. And it all just seemed stupid and ridiculous. And I said, I can write this. And that was it. And finally, I started writing because I just couldn't play the roles.
How many of us are approaching people who have venture capital? How many of us are actually sitting down with Netflix, with Hulu, with YouTube? That's where we're lacking. And we need that kind of opportunity to talk among ourselves and say, okay, how can we help each other? We're not doing that. Yeah. We're afraid of each other because I don't want you to make it. It's mine. Yeah. I'm going to make it. Right. What? I got the better project. Right. They're going to give me $10 million to do this. Oh, no, not her. No, please. My project's better. And that's the infighting that goes on, that avarice element within us.
I don't know. It's because we don't stick together. You don't see that many maids. There's nothing wrong being a maid or being a gardener or being a farm worker. But we even lost those because we got so aggressive and not wanting to play those and not wanting to promote those. It's not that we got aggressive. They felt they were going to insult us. So that's why we have to be very careful when we do meet with producers. I think that's why we're not taking the time now is to explain to them it's okay to play those roles, but we're talking about the other roles. Don't get rid of those other roles. It's okay to be a prostitute, or be a pimp, or be a gardener, or be a maid, but we also want to see the attorneys and the politicians and so forth.
If you want a publicist, you have to have a project and you have to have an objective. A lot of people think publicity is just getting your picture in the paper. And for a lot of people, that's enough. But that really shouldn't be enough. You really should have an objective. What do you want to accomplish by getting your picture in the paper? What is it that you're selling? How are you selling it? Who are you selling it to? What? Why? All of those questions you should be asking yourself. And what is going to be the end result? Your objective. If they do not have a publicist hired, which a lot of people starting out can't afford, then they must read up on marketing, and public relations and see how they can start practicing that themselves. And by that I mean, now that we have social media, make sure that you put together a very strong, robust social media presence that is unified and that has a brand message to it. I'm guilty of it too, that sometimes we just post too many different things on our feed. You want to be able to be mindful of your brand.
So let's talk brand.
Yes.
What is that?
Brand is who you are. Who do you stand for? What do you stand for? Who are you? What is your mission in life? That's your brand. So when you start your social media, people know what they're going to get in this feed. And that's how you build an audience. And so a lot of times people have too many things in their feed. And so it's a little bit, not confusing, but it's a little bit unfocused. And so it's harder to get the followers. It's harder to get the return people, because maybe this time it doesn't have anything to do with me.
The first thing I do is try to relax. And the second thing I do is read and read and read the script. Don't say the lines out loud till you have read those sides at least a dozen times. Because when you're reading, you are finding more and more possibilities for choices and maybe what that story is all about. There is no scene that you're going to audition for or that you're going to do that starts at the beginning and finishes at the end. Every scene starts in the middle and ends somewhere where it's going to go someplace else. You know, the whole story does not happen in one scene. And I do my best to relax so that I'm present and I can react to the person, you know, whatever they're bringing at me and from wherever I've made my choices, you know. So there isn't like a whole lot of mystery to acting at this point, okay? But I would say for young actors, you should know there's a lot of mystery to acting because the mystery is inside you and you need to keep discovering and uncovering and working out who you are and how you're going to fit into what you're doing. I still do that. It just is not as complicated as I used to make it when I was younger, but I think that's because I have a lot of life experience now.
The Godfather was when I decided that I wanted.
Okay.
Because they cast me for the singing thing because I didn't even know who Coppola was. I didn't know who Pacino. I didn't know anybody. I was insulated in my island, 21, 22 years old. What the hell? You don't care about anything else. So when I went to do The Godfather in Santo Domingo, and I saw Pacino going to do the scene where he kisses his brother, I had never seen anything like that in my life. And that's when I decided, I want to learn to do that. How do you do that? And so Theodora Van Runkel, who was there, she was the costume designer, she said, Strasberg is here. I'll introduce you to him. He's the teacher. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I met Strasberg in Santo Domingo. He was there in the same hotel that I was. That's when I decided to go back to Puerto Rico to how do I do this? And I would tell my director and my producers in the show, I want to be an actress. And they're like, yeah. Camera number 2, we're going to pan through her cleavage now. So we're going to take it this way. And then camera number 1, just take her legs and we're going to be punning down her thigh. Blah, 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 blah. Nobody took me seriously because I was just a sex symbol thing. When this man meets me.
You were a beauty queen.
And when this man meets me, he goes like, you're not even sexy with this thing that you're doing. You're an actress. You don't even know it. Let me guide you. And he became my mentor. And let me tell you something. When I came to the States, I never told anybody that I was a beauty queen for many years because I thought it would take away from me as an actor. I didn't want that to detract from my craft.
I am very outspoken towards Latin Hollywood because I feel like Latin Hollywood has taken Hollywood, which is this being that they criticize and want to be a part of, and instead of doing something better and fresher, they're just doing a Latin version of a system that they don't like, and so that's where I have an issue with it. So I don't participate in a lot of film festivals and conferences and stuff like that because I don't see that moving our people forward, and I don't understand why filmmakers that are just starting out go to these places when there isn't even a proven. Do your homework, investigate. Find out what's working and what's not working. And if all you want is a red carpet picture with a Latino celebrity, that's really easy to get. But if what you want is a career, you have to make the dedication. You have to do the work. You have to help other people. Even if they burn you, you have to help other people succeed in what they're doing because that's just a given. That's just going to happen.
Something that he probably won't mention, but I will. His genre is the urban genre. He's had a lot of people that will contact him or let him know that they're not going to support him because of the stereotypical characters.
Bullshit.
First thing
but they'll go support white people who are doing the stereotypical
Wow,
character.
you said it right there.
But if he's doing it, right, and it's actors they don't know, it's stereotypical. If Edward James Olmos is doing it and he's playing a gangster, oh, it's art. Or if some other well-known
like I
actor,
said, bullshit. I call bullshit.
and he's had people that will intentionally let him know that they are not supporting him because of what he is doing. And I said, have you seen the movie? No. Have you seen Cholo Chaplin? No, but I don't like the name. Well, if you see it, you'll get that it's the anti-Cholo. And even if he was a Cholo, all his characters are multi-dimensional characters. They're not just the Cholo. The women in his scripts all have strong roles and have amazing backgrounds, and they're fully developed characters, which is something that Hollywood doesn't get right. When I used to audition, I had 5 different Chola outfits. I had the slutty Chola, the LA Kings Chola, I had the, whatever, because that's all I was going out for. But they were written very
because they don't know our
they were
people.
written stereotypical. He knows that world. He grew up in that world. I grew up in that world. So there's a level of authenticity and a wholeness to those characters that doesn't exist in Hollywood.
What's great about them is that people would have never seen the show if it wasn't for the FYC. And I'm going to say this, especially those shows of color. People of color are a minority of members are in the academy. And I've heard the non-minority performer say, wow, that was really a great show. I would have never watched that on this particular network where the cast is primarily a person of color, people of color, actors of color. And so it's great opportunity for people to see what they would have never seen. And show those shows also that are outside the box. There are some senior members that don't have cable. They don't like to go on the internet. So it opens the door for shows to be seen that would have never been seen.
People hire us and they pay us money and they don't follow the coaching. And it breaks my heart because it's like, if you just listen, you hired me to do a job. If you just listen, I promise you, it's gonna turn out. But then people want to look good, or they don't believe, or they get nervous. Crowdfunding is not easy. Producing is not easy, as you know. It's a lot of work. Making a movie is not easy. But you've hired us, so just trust us. If we take you on as a client, it's because we believe in what you're creating. Now you have to believe us. So it makes no sense to me when people hire us and then they don't do what we coach them to do. So I would say, please, let the experts do their thing, and then you're expert at something. I'm an expert at something. So let us, trust us. That for me is the main thing in our business, in Hollywood as a whole, and the Latino community. To me, it makes no sense to wait for the system to create these opportunities for us. We have to create them ourselves. We have to create our own content, and we have to support each other. That's all we need, because we already have the buying power and the creativity and the talent.
You're my sister from another. Go ahead.
Definitely my first thing is also what Fanny said. If you hire a professional team for something, if you hired us for production, or if you hired us for crowdfunding or distribution, whatever it is, remember that you hired us because you knew we can do it. What are some common sense things about acting? I just think do the work. Just know that behind you, there are 1,000 people who maybe look like you who want that same position. Be as ready as you can be. Be genuine.
And if you have a problem with the way Latinos are represented in the media or any other group, so then don't take on those roles. Like we don't do those auditions anymore. We don't. We turn them down.
Performing saved my life, and of course, stand-up saved my life. And then when I wrote these shows, it was because I was going through something very so much I couldn't handle it. And then when I had, that's what I call an epiphany, when I go, oh, okay, this is what that was. I was on the other side of it. The show came out. I had to get it up. That's why I said I wasn't a perfectionist in it, meaning it was a story to tell. And in terms of my advice for other people, I think that it's just like Sandy was saying, I think everybody has a story to tell. Everybody in the world has a story to tell. But if you're a performer, if you're an actor, I think it's critical that, yes, you take your career in your own hands, and that, if you're an actor, you're a storyteller, whether you've written it down or not. And so it's time to let your story be the story and tell your story. And then in that storytelling, you find your humor, you find your depth, you find your pain. You have to dig deeper in solo shows. And that's why I love them, because there is pathos, and there's loads of humor, and there's wisdom. And again, just like you were saying, it's not about being, going out there. I'm gonna become a star. Oh my God, when they see me do these 7 characters, they're gonna I'm gonna blow their mind. It's gonna happen. And the reality is that, you're an artist first.
As hard as it is for an actor to try to get an agent, it is just as hard as managers trying to get agents for their clients. People say to me, we don't care where they came from, where they went to school. We just want to know, bottom line, what job did they do last? Where, that's what we care about. I remember when I first started, on a resume, it said featured role. And the agent said to me, if you plan to get an agent, get rid of the featured role, because we don't want anyone who's in featured roles. Then people say, if you've got too many co-star roles, you won't be able to be a guest star. I mean, it's just the craziest things. But you've got to start somewhere.
Let's just completely shatter the myth of the starving artist, right? This idea that I have to starve, I have to be willing to suffer, to sacrifice everything if I want to be successful. I think that that's nonsense, and I think that it is keeping artists small, right? So that's the first one. Tied to that is the idea that our money is separated from our art, right? That I'm over here focused on my art, and therefore this money thing has to be something just in the background because I don't want it to distract from my art, right? They are inextricably linked. And so rather than seeing money as this thing that I don't want to deal with or I have to deal with, see it as what actually supports everything that you love, not just your creativity, but your family, your relationships, your ability to make a difference in this world. So our relationship with money has to be one that we treasure and value, because by valuing it and treasuring it, we are also valuing and treasuring our art.
What I love so much about the Hot and Spicy Mamitas is that we were all so different, yet strong, and we had very clear voices. Suli was just like, her stuff was like, bam, Marilyn, bam, you, bam. Everybody had their own identity.
And we pretty much embraced all the Latino, denominations, because it wasn't all Mexicans or all Puerto Ricans.
Right.
It was a Dominicana, Puerto Riqueña,
New Rican,
Mexicana and Mexican American.
That's right.
We had it all.
It was a wonderful combination, I thought. And what I thought was interesting was whenever we try to bring some other Latina in, it didn't work. That there was a chemistry between the 5 of us that was just undeniable. And
it happened organically.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, we gelled.
The wholeness of it was just amazing, and how we did crazy stuff. Like, you can't see it now, but if you buy the CD and you open it up, we're in trash bags.
Yes. Remember? I made those dresses for us. Oh my God.
That's right.
We were having a photo shoot, and I was like, okay, girls, we're gonna make trash bag dresses.
And I think we freaked the photographer out.
Great. It
was
Probably.
What?
That was fun. And it's like, I bet you don't mind taking the garbage out now.
That's right. That was your thing. That's right. That's right.
It was a 3-character play, 2 men in wheelchairs, and I was the nurse, and they had me read magazines. So I insisted they were bridal magazines. So I'd be on stage just looking at bridal gowns. Then when they moved it to Broadway, I was heartbroken. They replaced me with someone else. And New Yorker magazine had John Simon wrote in the review that he liked the play, but they never should have replaced Miss Madurga with this other actress.
Oh, wow.
And that was one of those, like, oh, you mean I can do this? And not that I mean ill towards the other actress, but just somebody believing and somebody giving you feedback.
Yeah, when you're young and you get replaced like that, that's heartbreaking. It's like
what did I do wrong?
Yes, absolutely.
What do you like about therapy?
Everything. I like the attention, number one. I'm paying the guy for it. I find out a lot of things about myself that I would not otherwise know about myself, and it shocks the hell out of me. I also like the fact that I can ask questions to see if what I'm thinking is reality or if it's just in my head. And that's really important for me from the Vietnam War up to the present. I'm saying, am what I thinking right, or am I just crazy? Are my interpretations of reality is what reality is, or is it not? That's what I like about therapy. I get to ask those questions.
So do you use therapy as a learning or as a accountability?
Both. If you've got a good therapist, he or she's not going to let you get away with anything. They're the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
You're paying them. They have no axe to grind, so you can't get pissed off with them. They're just there to give you your reality, a reality check.
So you started at HB Studio, and for those of you who don't know what HB Studio is, it was the Uta Hagen Herbert Berghoff Studios.
Yeah, which
so
is still there.
And you studied with
Uta Hagen.
How was that?
It was pretty amazing. I was actually one of her youngest students. You couldn't get in unless you were 18, and I was like 17 and a half. And it was crazy to just even get in. You had to sign up. You had to get up at 4 a.m. The line was all the way around the block. It was terrifying, because she'd look at you and she's like, well, you're overacting, you're indicating, and I'm like, but somehow I did get in, and I studied with her for 3 years, and it was just amazing. It was amazing. Yeah.
I worked that whole first year just to get an understanding of all the complexities of the music business. And it was funny because I don't think I ever really liked music to that degree. I liked all the elements. I liked that I could wear this to work and nobody would say anything. And I liked to see an artist that I was able to take, and they had a bag basically off the bus, and then you take them and all of a sudden they're on the MTV Awards or the Soul Train. So for me, I like the music, but I'm not a music aficionado. Like there's some people who know every song, every beat. I'm like, no, I like the transformation. I like the creation of. I like that there was a lifestyle that was afforded to you that kind of just fit my natural rhythm. If I had to wear a business suit every day, I would just lose my mind. So
all the people from the record company would come in and try to promote their records. And that's how I got the first taste of a record company and what they do. And seeing it in Billboard, and I really didn't have an interest in staying in radio, but I said, oh, maybe I'll try a record. And I happened to tell the guy at Atlantic, hey, if you ever have any openings, I'd like to come over. And he then told me, like 2 days later, there's a job opening as a secretary. I went to college. I'm not going to be a secretary. I'm putting my nose in the air. And they said, you better go over there and get your foot in the door, which is what I did. And I moved up and stayed there like 13 years.
We made sure that she did pop press, urban press, everything. And I still remember the first market we went into. And before we got out of the limousine, I said to Janet, Jan, look, I got to tell you something in preparing you for this first interview. It was John Landis, Morning Q at Houston. And she says, what? I said, I need you to do me a favor. She says, what's that? I said, well, your brothers, they have a history of answering questions by one word. All righty, thank you. I said, that ain't gonna cut it. I said, this is something you need to do that I'm telling you. I said, I want you to walk into these radio stations like a United States Senator, extend your hand and say, hi, I'm Janet Jackson. What is your name? What do you do here? And she did it. I mean, knowing she was an actress before, she was spot on, and it was electric because people were interacting with a Jackson on a whole different personal level. And she was interested in what they did and thanking them for the support and stuff. And it was just, that album ended up doing 20 million.
Also, you can participate at the Academy and enhance your community, because every peer group has 2 governors. So they're kind of like your mentor in the whole peer group. And they're nominated, and they are in office for 2 years, sometimes 4 years if they get extended, if they win again. And they come up with ideas about events. They're your point person that you can talk to at the Academy. And so run run for an office at the Academy.
Or volunteer.
I just want to say, not all the times do we follow the formula of an R&B artist becoming a hit on R&B and then crossing over to pop. There were instances where we would have a white artist, in this particular case Madonna, who actually got her start on black radio.
Yes, you brought her over.
I brought her over to your station.
That's right.
I brought her over to Q102
right.
and KGFJ and introduced her to, yeah.
That's right.
And she was played on black radio 3 or 4 months before Kiss FM, and at that time KIQQ would play her. Lucky Star was a hit on KGLH and KA's, KGFJ, K-Day, and Q before Kiss FM was even aware of what was going on. So ironically, that particular artist got her start in R&B radio, and then she kind of, I guess, reverse crossed over to pop, and the rest, they say, is history. Of course, her first album was produced by
Jelly Bean.
Jelly Bean on one of the tracks, but Reggie, James Mtume and Reggie Lucas. And their second album was produced by Nile Rodgers, so there was an R&B connection there. Both Michael and I, we were very fortunate at the time that we got our jobs as promotion people, that there was a brand new thing called MTV and BET. That really opened up the game for record sales. When MTV and BET made their debut on the air, and people could actually see what the artists look like as opposed to just hearing them on the radio, record sales just exploded. It's probably the biggest time in music where sales accelerated since the Motown sound and the British invasion.
People want to get to know the artist. They want to know their idiosyncrasies. They want to know him as a person. So you put personal stuff up there, stuff that you want to reveal. There's stuff you want to conceal, like where you live and all that sort of thing. But be a real person. Be as transparent as possible. And when they know you, they'll love you. Mm-hmm. And there's a better chance of them loving their music if you think you know them. But it takes time. It takes work. Mm-hmm. But it's diligence.
I've taken breaks from it, long breaks from it. But I didn't think it would last this long, and that it would become a keynote performance, and that it would run on PBS. I didn't think that this personal, what I thought was very personal, would resonate to so many people around the world and in the United States. So I discovered that it was much, much bigger than myself, and that it would have a life longer than I ever imagined, because after the show was born, then everybody was like, oh my God, you need to do this more, then you need to take this to festivals. So I had my friends come and sit at School of Future with me, where I was director, and I said, what can we vision about this piece? Where should I go? And I wanted it to be an off-Broadway show, but I discovered there was a whole nother world for me to journey with this piece. I had no idea. Yeah.
And you took it to Edinburgh.
Yes. Crazy. Yeah.
And Day of the Dead is really 3 things. It's you honor and respect people who've died and give them their place of recognition in the community or in your life. You come to terms with your own mortality. You also realize that you have a very finite period of time here on earth. And because of that, you celebrate life every day. And that's whether it's your life or the life of people around you. That's, so I try to really, really be as cognizant as I can with every individual that I interact with, because they're a star, they're unique, they're like a fingerprint, and that should be celebrated.
A lot of people associate me with jazz, but I've done a lot of work in R&B and in pop also. While I was in New Orleans, I worked at one of the top rock stations there for about 6 to 8 months. That was about all I could take. And I went back to WYLD. But that was a great opportunity for me because it's something I could put on my resume and something that I then had experience with. And I think that being able to go to do more than one format, to be able to do talk shows and conduct interviews, and to be able to edit and put a public affairs show together. The fact that I can do all those things, I think, is a reason why 40 years after I took a sabbatical leave from teaching, I'm still doing this thing.
I think when you're drawn into a relationship with God, that's when you begin to know the whole truth. We're not going to get the truth from other people who don't recognize who you are, what you have, and they want to compartmentalize what you do as though God is not a part of your creativity. We have a creator who makes people creative. All of the movies and cars that are made, planes, buildings, architecture, all of these things are by design.
When Nun asked everybody, and what would you like to be when you grew up? They had firemen, police, all this. They got to me. I wanted to be an actress. And the whole place fell down laughing. It was hilarious to them that I would think that. But God uses the peculiar, the things that the world would think are silly.
Mm-hmm.
He uses those people to really surprise them.
Mm-hmm.
That hurt my feelings, but it made me even want it more.
Show
made
them.
Me,
I'll show them.
It's exactly now when I look back. When you're a little kid, you don't know that.
Actors, we tend to want to have our best auditions in the car, and after the fact.
Why could I have done this?
And why didn't I do this? And me, it was one of the things that I said to myself is don't rush it. Play the moments. And everything that I was saying on the way home, I rushed it. So I got home, my coffee was still rather warm. And I'm sitting there and I'm just beating myself up. And the phone rings.
You're talking about portraying historical figures, keeping history alive. That's very different than someone just taking a personal story that they want to develop and really get out there and share with others as well. They're both very valid. I had been touring with a company called the African American Drama Company in San Francisco. They had a one-woman show, a one-man show, both historical figures. I was with them when I lived in the Bay Area. Then I moved to Los Angeles, and I thought, maybe I need to create my own show, choose some other women that they're not really portraying and keeping alive historically, so I can continue the work they've begun by my own work. And also, one time, usually the male would do his male characters, and I'd do mine, historical figures. And so I would open for him, and then he would close. But this one particular time, and we did colleges and universities, this one particular time, he wasn't with me. It was only me, and they gave me the check, and they didn't seal it. And I opened up the check, and I went, oh, my goodness, so that's what he's getting for me, doing his show.
Wow.
Oh, maybe I better think about creating my own work. So there were a number of reasons that made me think it's time now for my own vehicle.
Wow.
Majority of people have sexual shame. I know this because as an empath, I don't know if you feel this, but when I pick up on it, it's like snakes, energy snakes. I mean, in Hollywood, you feel tons of men. There's so much sexual shame that I feel like, you know what? If we can tell stories where people get to express themselves and celebrate their sexuality in whatever way it's organically coming out of them, and whatever, then I think it's wonderful, because we need to eradicate sexual shame, because it's the worst kind of. We need to eradicate shame, but sexual shame is the lowest energy. So then to me, I go, you know what? We will live in a better world where people stop being ashamed of being sexual human beings, because our sexuality is connected to our creativity.
Yes.
I think I scare the hell out of people because I'm so comfortable talking about sex and being a sexual being, and also being extremely creative, because I see the connection between the two.
Well, because you're honest.
And I'm honest. And I
You're
go,
honest.
you know what? And more than even honest, I'm authentic and real, which sometimes scares the hell out of men, because they're like, oh my God, we've never met someone this assertive about sex. And they think I'm psycho. I go, no, I'm not psycho. I'm just a real woman.
This is a rule of thumb, and I hope you follow this. Get a solid 5 or 10 minute act that you can take anywhere. Solid. And from that, build another 5, build another 5, build another 5. Before you know it, you got 30 or 45 minutes. But once you get that solid act, be able, and don't be afraid to jump off track and say something else that has nothing to do with that. Like if somebody comes in the back of the room and they're wearing a funny suit, don't be afraid to say it. Don't be afraid to live in the moment.
To call the elephant out in the room.
Right. Because other people are tripping it if the sound goes off in the microphone. Don't be afraid to put the microphone down and say something like, where'd you get this Radio Shack, crap, or whatever you want to say. Don't be afraid to do it, because you're exercising that ad lib thing, and it goes back to what I said earlier. Nobody knows your act. They don't know if that was part of your act or not.
You can't be too full of yourself. There's got to be a lot of humility in it. And yet, when you're approached with something that is so great and you're like, you truly want it, what helped me get over that was your precise thought that I said, wow, I'm being brought in. That's a win right there. And I'm getting a chance. I'm going to do the best I can with this character, and just let the chips fall where they may and not be so attached to the outcome.
Yes.
No expectation, you know. And while I was sitting there, ironically enough, a dear friend of mine who is a very talented, very successful, hardworking, works all the time. His manager was trying to get him in and he couldn't. I overheard them mentioning his name and I'm like, wow. So, but this is life lessons. Every audition also is a life lesson about yourself, how you approach yourself, how you think about yourself. You know, you can't be too big for your britches, but you also have to honor and know that you have worth. And when people...
Your boundaries. You gotta know your boundaries.
And when people say to me, and this is important for all you young up and coming, when people say, how do you handle rejection? I go, oh, I'm not rejected. It's not rejection, it's selection, which is a big difference. They're not rejecting me, they're just not selecting me.
You got to do a lot of homework, you know, and a lot of good filmmakers and a lot of good films really never see the light of day, you know, because of that aspect of it. Again, I'd like to say it's important for you to know who you hit your wagon to. It's important to know who the players are. And that's why legal and agency representation is of the utmost importance. You know, you have to have a great attorney or a great representation or a great producer's rep to really make sure that you and your project ever see the light of day. That was one of the key things that I learned as far as distribution it goes. I'm better for it, you know, having gone through the process and talk to different people who have gone through the process, get knowledge from them. To what you were speaking about earlier as far as the community is concerned, the film community, the cowboy community. One of the things that I learned when I came into the business, which pretty much kind of spoiled me at a very young age, is that on Book of Numbers, I was surrounded by filmmakers of color. I was surrounded by an African-American crew as well as a cast. And so, you know, at 13, I'm thinking, oh, this is gonna be great.
It's all like this.
Yeah, you know, for the rest of my life. And got to Hollywood and it wasn't, you know. So you have to find good people that are willing to share that information and that knowledge. Again, you know, to your point, so that you won't become obsolete or ignorant to the game.
Right.
There's a really fine line, and you probably know this too, of being too social because you're really not part of those circles yet, and then also just really bringing what you bring. So I did a show, and I won't say the name of the show because I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but the lead actor that I was working with was a hero of mine, and I'm his best friend in the show. And so I sat there and I was so excited. We have a lot of things in common. I was excited about talk about this and to work with this guy and whatever. So anyway, as we launched into it, he and I had no chemistry. And I'm thinking, okay, I can either really let this bother me or just kind of go do my own thing and bring my role and just be a best friend when the camera's rolling as best I possibly can, which is what I did. So there's a fine line of let that go. You don't need to be popular. You don't need to be, you know, Robin Williams coming on to Happy Days and going to have a whole series the next week. If that happens, great. If it doesn't, then great. But anyway, that's what I focused on, was that little, just have fun, be you.
All I tried to do after that was be funny. I didn't care about motivating anybody. I was still trying to make it. I'll always say Willie Barcena taught me how to be a comic, and I may not even have arrived at that yet, but he taught me there's being a hack and there's being a comic who loves the discipline of it, who understands what being a comic is. He's all, be a comic, dude, write a joke and then work on that joke over and over and over again. And I became funny because Willie really taught me about the discipline of comedy.
Sometimes you come across either writers or casting directors that place these false limitations on you.
On your physical.
Which is ridiculous. The voice is very different. I mean, there's lots to learn. There are accents, there are cadences, there are regional accents, also the different languages, also sounds. I mean, you know, you have so many different options as an actor to work with your voice. I would definitely encourage anyone listening to you today to look into their true voice. Voice work, as I said, knocks down those ridiculous limitations. Also, as I said before, the voice is so powerful. I mean, why do you think there's all this, you know, all these subliminal messages are being sent to you all day on television? You're not really paying attention, but if you started to pay attention, you would also see that it's also really important for people of color to spread their voice, their vision, their way of looking at things. It's happening. I mean, we have so many amazingly talented people of color, you know, writing, directing.
One day I got recognized waiting on Carl Weathers. He looked up at me and he goes, "What are you doing here?" I said, well, he goes, you're a movie star. I go, no, you know how much you make on your first movie. And he actually got me a few auditions.
Wow.
I had a hard time getting an agent. I was, I got the gap in my teeth. I was a quirky girl, not a pretty, the girl next door, not the ingenue. And every agent was trying, well, dye your hair auburn. Well, fix your gap. Well, do the, I was like, no, this is
too much.
This is the product. Because as an actor, if you don't stay, you play all these characters, but it's still, there's a truth that you have to hold on to, I think, under all of that. Especially for stand-up, but that didn't come for a really long time.
Well, the writer writes a script, and then the actor gets the script, and then the actor has to figure out what the heck the writer wrote. And then we have to break it down into beats, and we have to figure out what we want. And it's a problem that actors have, because actors want to act, they want to be emotional, they want to do all of this stuff, but sometimes they're not servicing the material. And Roy was big time into servicing the material, figuring out what the material was about, putting yourself into it, and then bringing the best choices, hot choices from yourself, from your personal life, into the material. So that's text analysis, going to follow actors forever. And you get better and better and better the more you do it, the more you practice.
So what's a hot choice? Like when you say hot choices?
Well, if I'm supposed to find somebody that I hate in a scene, so I find somebody in my life that has caused me problems, it could be from 10 years ago. I used to use an actor, upstaged me in a movie, who came on to my girlfriend at the time, and was just a miserable human being. I used to use him all the time. It was great. And it might be somebody like right now in your life, or something that happened right now in your life that you can bring into a scene, and all of a sudden you have a choice that makes you come alive, and you don't have to act. It's coming from right with you.
You also mentioned beats. What are beats?
You're playing a moment. The moment is very clear about what you want, and then the moment changes, and you have to try to find something else. So what I do, and what a lot of actors do, is where the moment stops, you draw whatever this is. I'm not
a line, yes, or a little
whatever
slash,
that thing is, a
slash, yeah.
Right? And then the new moment happens, and that's another beat. So you have a beat, and then you have another beat, and you try to. Then one beat follows the other, or if it doesn't, then you have a pause or a transition to try to figure out what you want. And it's all kind of in the writing. The writers don't know how the actors are going to take charge of it. That's our job. But the writers are clear about where it's going. We have to figure out how to make that happen.
And I was like, I don't want to do stand up. My mom did stand up. Again, my mom, I don't know if you know her.
I don't know her.
This lady named Lydia Nicole, for all of the viewers. But yeah, so she was like, you got to do stand up. So Beth was like, you got to do stand up, or, I know you want to write, but like, this is a good way to get into rooms, because if people see you write, they're going to be like, if people see you're funny, they're going to be like, oh, do you have anything we can read? Versus you being like, hey, I'm funny, please read this.
I love like method and like getting into the actor's headspace of like, what are some instances that have happened to you that are similar to the script that we can kind of expound upon, and we can really draw out, and we can really create this world. But when we've created it, let's leave it alone so that we can still allow for spontaneity when we're shooting. Because now we're in a good spot and we're in a groove. I don't want to ruin that, because then it doesn't allow for sometimes spontaneity to happen. And I'm someone who loves not being so fixated to the script. The script is a great template, but it's not everything. You got to know what you're seeing in front of you. And if it's not working on the day, you have to sort out, okay, what do I do? And I think for directors, it's great to take acting classes if you can, or speak to a lot of actors about, this is the type of language, I would like, or like actors like when you're directing them. And I think it just makes you a better director to know the different types of methods that are out there.
When I walk into an audition, my job is to make all those people out there relaxed. I come in and I make them relax. I tell them a joke. I tell them something about my backstory, and make them relax, because I come in relaxed.
The most fun time I've had was at Paramount. I played the Brazilian.
With Mexico.
I asked. It was a horrible day, crowded, and the casting director was not having a good day. And she go outside, don't go outside, don't go. She was just having a day. So she came out and said, "Okay, whatever you do, all right, forget about the accent. Just read the lines." So I went in and I said, "Has anybody here ever been to Brazil? Anybody here speak Brasileira? Fala muito bom." And she's looking at me like. And then I said a couple of jokes with using the language, and they're just cracking up. And she's just steaming, looking at me. "I told you not to do that." They booked me. I'm the same way. Yeah. I like to come in there, get them relaxed, because I tell my actors this. They reject so many people every day. They need to lighten up too. Exactly. And if you come in, you're so prepared and so confident in what you're going to do. Have a little fun. I mean, walk in, how about those Dodgers? How about those Lakers? You got about a minute and a half before, okay, let's get to work.
I have always been a news junkie. I just am. I like to watch the news and hear about fresh things. But what I really love about being a publicist and working with rising actors and rising creators is helping them land their first piece of coverage, their first article. The excitement is, I enjoy helping other people, share their talents, right, with the world. And that's exciting. It's exciting for them, but it's exciting for me too, because it's not always easy to land somebody a little bit of coverage, but it gives me a challenge. And then when you land it, it's exciting. It's just exciting in general. So that's really why I do what I do. And that's why I work with people that I work with. I have some celebrity clients that I work with, but I don't work with them in the way you know them. So it's like if they're shifting gears, like if a well-known actress is shifting gears because now she's directing. So I'll work with her as the director, but not as the actress. She'll get a full service firm that'll help her and handle her with that. I take just this other little sector that we're focusing on.
My thing was always, and I tried to impress this on my assistant. I told her when I hired her, I said, I need you to have this kind of work ethic, is that this job, the Warner Brothers job, cannot suffer because of our acting work. And most importantly, they just need to feel safe and taken care of. So for example, if I had to leave in the middle of the day for an audition and I knew that my boss had a big meeting the next morning, I would go in his office and say, "Hey, I'm taking off for an audition. I probably will be back about 5:30, but this is what my assistant is doing to get ready. And then I'm going to come back at 5:30 or 6, and I'm going to make sure the deck is all good, and it will be on your desk tonight before I leave. So that when you come in the morning, because what if I wake up with a stomach, stomach problem or something, and I can't come in the morning? I would leave the deck on his desk at night, so that when he came in, he could just go, she's taking care of me. And as long as they were taken care of, that's what I did. So some weeks I might work 20 hours, some weeks I might work 50 hours, but I always made sure that my Warner Brothers job was taken care of. I worked on budget spreadsheets in my trailer. Now that's not ideal to be on set and you're waiting, but you know how it is. You spend a lot of time in your trailer. Right. So I'd be in my trailer and trying to look on my phone, because this was before iPads and stuff, and looking on my phone and trying to look at spreadsheets and find problems, and calling my assistant and saying, "Hey, take a look at this." I just did everything I could to keep them cozy, feeling secure and taken care of. And my boss would be like, "Break a leg," and then
Well, the first thing you have to know that comedy is very subjective, and so whoever's giving you the note, you know what, this isn't quite it. I don't really think this is funny. I don't think our audience will get it. Then you have to really go back and think about that audience, and then try to come at it at a different, what did I miss? If I'm doing a show for a church. And this is like a really base example. And the pastor comes and goes, "Well, you used profanity in it, it's for a church." Well, obviously you go back and go, "Okay, take the profanity in it and still make it funny." Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You just have to really know who
the
the
audience is.
Yeah. Be open to exchange ideas and listen and listen. We, as storytellers, we see it in our heads. We know what we want it to look and sound like and all of that. But be open to the other person's opinion. They may call you, show you something that you never even thought about. And that's the beauty of it.
Sometimes you're filming somebody or you photograph
and they keep going to that same pose. And rather than stop them, I let them get it out of their system. Get all your poses you want to get out, which we're not going to use, but go ahead and do it. And I've been shooting away. And then once they get tired, say, okay, that was great. Now let's do this.
Mick Jagger has said that, Prince didn't want to do anything with us after that because he was just so nervous and afraid. It's like, man, your crowd just booed me and just beat me up. He said, no, man, you gotta continue to do this. But I think it was at that point that, and Prince never said anything about it. I mean, he's talked about it, but he never said what I'm thinking. It was at that point that he decided, you know what? I just can't come out here with any old goddamn thing. I got to have a fucking show. I got to just, Michael Jackson used to say, I want to hurt him in the beginning when I come out. And at the end of the concert, I want to kill him in the end. He used to say, I want to hurt him in the beginning and kill him in the end. Prince had to develop that.
Yes.
Because he had been playing up to that point. He had been playing little shows that Warner Brothers had set up around town, and his fans were there, his early fans.
Right.
These people wanted nothing to do with him, the Rolling Stone crowd. And they wanted nothing to do with anybody, to be honest.
That's right. In college, my nickname was Bluesy. It's a Black Lucille Ball. And so that is my foundation, is my facial expressions and the physicality and the, playing with the audience and the raised eyebrow, because that's what I learned. I grew up doing impressions. You
do screwball comedy very well.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's
that was my first sense of comedy was of doing impressions. Like my first impression was Charlie Chaplin, and I would do that, or I would do things to stay up at night. So I would take like the plastic tree. This is real, but a plastic tree, and late at night after my bedtime, I would just kind of walk into the living room with everybody and kind of walk behind the tree with the tree across the room. And because they would start laughing, Sandy, okay, you can stay up. And yes, I mean, I was rewarded for being funny, and and so I use those different tools and understand that it is different for a woman, and it's changing. We've so many women that are broken through now, but it's not always like that. And we still have our challenges, and I just am finding my way. I'm finding my way back to stand to the point where I love it. I stepped away from it because I had so much TV and other things going on that, I began to miss it and understand that it's intrinsic to what I do.
I think when you're creative and you're really tapped in, I think a lot of times people don't get you. And so, like, you may say something that's really, like, important, but they're kind of like staying on the shallow end. I always say this, there's a difference between snorkeling and scuba diving. Snorkeling, you're on the surface. So I need to find some scuba divers sometimes. So the loneliness is real, and it's been there since I was a little kid, but it's also helped me to be who I am as a creative.
Mm-hmm. I remember understanding that my idea of a scene was not the scene. Like, what I imagined it to be was not the scene. He could break you. And he did. He broke me, and I just remember standing there crying like hysterically. And then he calls me the next day and says, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, yeah, but I'm totally humiliated. So that was one. He could break, and you had to get to that place of vulnerability and really,
which is what he wanted.
Yes, and what are the doings? The doings was one of the most important things I remember Roy teaching us, was you have to have doings, and even if it's one little thing that you're looking at, it's whatever. That was a phenomenal pearl of wisdom. And you had to do your work. You had to know where the beats were. You had to know where the what did you want, and how do you win,
make
a
choices.
Really taking the time in a scene, starting with the first beat, not playing the whole scene, but just play your first beat when you start, because you can't play the whole scene. You can only play that first beat, but to have done your work, your work had to be filled. And that was the thing about Roy. He would zero in and find that spot where you would become vulnerable, and then he would find his way in, and you would feel what it felt like to be real in a scene.
I'll have actors say, "Can I have the submission report? Like, I'm a little disappointed. I haven't booked anything." Well, I don't book the job. You do. If the casting director thought you were right, you got the audition. So you need to do everything you can to book it. But just because I got you 30 auditions, which is incredible, and you didn't book anything, well, should I be apologizing to you, or should you be saying thank you so much for submitting me at 11 at night for that job that was due by 9 a.m. tomorrow, so I could get hopefully a self-tape in?
A dark creative expressionist is just a person who is an artist, deals in more in the realm of genre, and that could be film, it could be painting, it could be photography, it could be recording, it could be poetry. It's a person that just deals a little bit more in that dark place that we would think more as gothy. And one of the things that a lot of the people that love being in that sort of darker space is that they get sort of categorized as being odd, or maybe there might be something wrong with you, where it's like maybe you have thoughts of maybe hurting yourself, and not necessarily. It's a place of comfort to many people. So when I was really pinpointing down who the people that were joining the site, I created the term to say that it was a place for them to feel comfortable. So it's dark, creative expressionists, people that just sort of, live in that space and are creating and are free to express the same way that we did it. Because I started Lion Horror because I wanted to keep busy, but it was also the linchpin was the fact that I loved horror, right?
You have to love this business, because let me tell you, all the rejections, a lot of people think you booked all the time. No, you have no idea how many times we go and we get callbacks and we get on a veil. A lot of people, they're not in the business, they don't understand that it's between you and somebody else, and you get released. I'm the queen of callbacks. I am the queen of callbacks. I get a callback all the time. That doesn't mean that I get the job. So you have to have thick skin. You have to love the business in order to be in it. I think that's the only advice I can give you. And be prepared. Be prepared. When you have a job or either a commercial, make sure you look at the breakdown, what they're looking for, and just be you.
The whole history of our people is so mixed, and often so much of it left off the wagon, so to speak. But what I want to do is bring new information or reintroduce old information, so that shows the worthiness of people of color, that has nothing to do with our condition of being in a society where we are always struggling against an oppressive force.
When I first started going out, and they're asking for a young black male, generally I'm not what they had in mind. They want dark skin, black looking black kid.
Right.
I would have to win them over. I would have to show them something different, something they had not thought of yet, and I would have to listen. The fact that
huge
that I'm coachable,
yes,
that I can take direction, played a big part in me being successful. But where does that come from? My mother had me when she was very young. I was raised by my mother and her girlfriends. I got like 5 mothers and aunties and whatever. Shut up, pay attention. We're talking. You don't. You learn to learn. And again, to win in that situation, I learned early on, just keep your mouth shut, pay attention. You're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff to be able to navigate this later.
I wrote a script that was 11 pages long, and it turned out to be a 15-minute narrative. I got some excellent actors to do it. It toured the festivals. It won a couple of awards here and there.
Now, were you just the writer-director, or did you, or were you acting in it as well?
I didn't act in it. This is the first time I was just behind the camera, and it was so liberating. No pressure to act. It was just me just enjoying calling the shots, and and then obviously then creating a whole new version of that film once I was cutting it. So I really learned how to edit a film during that film.
I actually worked at the Laugh Factory. That was really my stand-up 101. And that's the place that made me want to do stand-up. So I was like working behind the scenes and everything. Mind you, I was already writing and, doing my own things creatively. But I just really got a good glimpse and just like a comedy 101 from just being in the club and seeing people perform from, Chris Spencer to Rodney Dangerfield to Earthquake to Melanie Camacho. Like I saw everybody and I just absorbed a lot just from being in the environment, from what was going on stage and behind the scenes as well.
Well, let me just say, between Resurrection and Los Americans, I wrote at least a pilot or a movie every year in between.
Wow.
And that's how hard it is to get another show on. But finally, I had met Robert Townsend years ago, and he came to me and he said, hey, we want to do a show for the internet, and you're the guy. So I met him for lunch, and at lunch, he said, we're doing this thing for the internet, the B, and we want you to do this, create another Latino drama. And I said, okay, I'll do it. He said, we don't have a lot of money. I said, I don't care, I'll do it.
What exactly is an entertainment strategist?
It is a title that I have given to myself because me having a background in the legal field, I understand contracts, also wanting to be an actress and working as an actress, I could just see what celebrities needed. So I literally could go to a celebrity and say, what is it that you want to do? And when they tell me, this is my goal, this is where I'd like to be in, 5 years or 2 years, it was a blueprint in my mind. I could literally come up with and devise a plan to say, this is exactly what we need to do. And that has just been a gift for me. It just comes easy. So that's what I do the very first 2 classes when I teach. They will introduce themselves and I will say, what are you majoring in and what is it that you want to do? And that very first class, my class is normally 20 students. So the first class I take 10 students and I will say, have you thought about this? This is what you need to do. What about this? What about this? The students are like, oh my goodness, I didn't think of that, and a lot of my students, they're already working in this field.
Right.
So they are editors and they're producers, they're directors, they're working in music, they're working behind the scenes. But I get my students to think out of the box. You need to do this. I just come up with a plan and it just seems so simple to me that I could see this pathway.
New York, the actors in New York back then, we had a sense of family and community. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If I went up on something and I didn't feel I was right for it, the other actor say, Roxanne, you ought to go check this audition out.
So you were doing shows in New York. You were just working.
Oh no,
shows?
then I did some theater, and then I got a television show that filmed in Lexington, Kentucky called Reader's Tube. And so I did that. So I would then I went to Springfield, Massachusetts and did a regional theater. I did A Raisin in the Sun playing Beneatha. And with Janet Leigh, who I replaced on Broadway, she was Ruth. And so, so I would get theater gigs here and there. But one day my friend came to visit me, Jeff Johnson, who lives in Atlanta. He said, Reese, he called me by my last, Reese, you need to come out to California and get some television work. And so he sent me a ticket. I went out there and stayed with him a little while. And then I was able to get some television work. My first show, I think, was Hill Street Blues.
I guess just understanding how the behind the scenes work and being comfortable with that process, I guess, made me feel comfortable about what I was getting into, entendiéndole más as somebody who came from like nothing to do with any of this world except watching TV, right? So I think it gave me that sense of comfort with that. Also, at one point, the producer wanted me to continue with him as his executive assistant to continue to move forward. And I decided that if I stayed and I started to make more money, then I would not probably pursue my acting dream. So there came a point where I was like, no, tengo que actuar. So at the same time that it gave me a behind the scenes look, I think it also solidified that acting was really what I wanted to pursue at that time.
And once I start creating something, I'll make it all the way to the end. I don't quit. I don't stop, because now at this point I'm so invested. I've already invested a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of people in the process also helping me too. And it's not that I don't want to let them down. I also don't want to let myself down. And without putting that into words, because sometimes I don't say that out loud, but I think if I think about it, I'm saying I can't let myself down. I know that I have it in me to finish this project, and so I'll finish it. But the way that I work now, to answer your question, the way that I work now is I do a lot of research. I take the time to understand what goes into a particular thing or particular project. And then I just look and see if I can fulfill that, if it's realistic within my own means and with my time.
So you're counting the cost before you make the investment.
For sure. I'm not going to sacrifice the things that I need to provide for my family. But I still am going to take a risk on myself. It's just a little bit more calculated today.
When you hit a mainstream TV series, you stick to the lines. So, I got a little insecure because I wasn't sticking to the lines. So I go to the director and I am apologizing to her. I'm like, I'm really sorry that I didn't stick to my lines. And I thought it was so beautiful because she looks at me and she's like, you know what, David? We hired you for a reason. If I need to direct you, I will, but you're doing great. Continue doing what you're doing. It's wonderful. That gave me the freedom. That gave me this certain level of liberation for me to be able to truly create and not get stuck in my head and dive down and make it just create from moment to moment.
And I fell in love with producing because I kind of saw people's talents and say, okay, I think you should ask this person to film for you or this director. And then, I'm always asking how much those things cost.
So necessary. You must know budget. Oh, Lord Jesus. You got to know the budget.
I'm sorry. You want to get that camera? How much that is? A day? I called myself a producer whore. I will do anything. I produce anything.
That's hilarious.
After school, any projects, even if it's a small budget, I would produce it, whatever it is. Assistant producing, taking notes. So after Maria, I just, her theater, I just produce and volunteer anywhere I can.
It's that organic impulse that we have, that when you do just exactly what you're talking about, said you don't have to think about having integrity or respect or responsibility or even, I'm going to give this character that. It's already there. It's part of our being. And when you're free, then all those things flow from you in a way that is really, really good. And the audience sees it. And the way we learned it, the improv scenes is I gave you who you are. It's 3 lines. I tell you who you are. You tell me who I am. I tell you where we are. You tell me more about where we are. Then I tell you why we're here. And then you tell me more about why we're here. It's really hard to do. But if you follow those 3, practice them like you have to practice everything else, then you can. And the audience doesn't really know what's going on, but what's happening is that I'm not making myself that sheriff or that the hero. I'm making you the hero. And the audience say, wow, something's happening here. There's a lot of giving going on here. Giving and taking. I'm giving to you, you're giving to me. So it's like the best of what we want in the world.
When they come in to register and they say, okay, I'm going to register today, they register. And then I have 5 or 8 different monologues and I have them read it. So I can listen to what their voice is like. I'm already listening. I'm already starting to work with them, but they don't know that. But they're reading it and they put that down. I says, okay, try this one. So we look at about 8, maybe 5 to 8 different monologues. And I says, which one do you like the best? And say, well, I like these 3. So we go over those 3 again, and then they finally make a decision. But they make the decision. But I always start with an angry monologue because that makes the emotions come up. Anybody, to get mad is easier than to try to be dramatic and cry and comedy, forget about it. It's much harder because there's timing involved. So I never start with comedy. I always start with anger so that I can start to rev up their feelings. If they can get through the monologue, because I say you must have it thoroughly memorized. That is a must. And sometimes, well, I have 3/4. I says, well, I'll give you another week then. We'll do another. But I really try to get them disciplined right away. This is very important to be disciplined because my technique requires them to do the next step and do the homework.
We have to engineer a career as an artist, which is I am studying my craft. I believe in my craft. I'm having a hard time with this part in my craft. For some reason, my teacher keeps saying I'm not in my voice. I got to go find a voice teacher or something. There's something I'm not doing in this. It's not working. Whenever I get in an argument in class, my voice goes up really high. That is someone who, like Van Gogh, is going, I want to understand the color yellow. That is the kind of artist we have to be. And suddenly, this conversation you and I are having right now about vision and book a job, don't book a job, it doesn't matter because you are so invested in your art that the jobs feel like glorious, awesome, incredible mistakes that you get to say yes to. That just happen out of the sky, right? I'm not saying that we don't have lulls in our career. It's a roller coaster. You shouldn't do things in the business. But I just really want to make sure the number one thing that I say to an actor when they come to me and they're saying they're feeling out of sorts or the business isn't working or any of that mishigas, the first thing I say is, when's the last time you acted? Because as A Course in Miracles would say, be determined each day not to leave your function unfulfilled. I will say it again. Be determined each day not to leave your function unfulfilled. If you believe your function is to be an actor, which that's all you need is the belief that that's the truth. You don't have to do anything more than that. Then that means every day you are not acting, you are distanced from the truth of who you are. And so your brain is, of course, going little wacky bananas inside. Because the truth of who you are is most themselves when they are acting. And that's when wisdom comes to you.
When did you get bitten by the bug to write?
When I was 3, before I even knew how to write. And my grandfather was a great storyteller. And every evening, after he came home and we ate, he used to sit in the porch with coffee and crackers and cheese and my grandmother and my uncles and neighbors, and they would just tell stories. And I was the only kid that would sit with them. I would sit in my grandfather's lap, and that was, and the kids would be playing with toys, but I was listening to stories. And when I learned how to read, I started reading fairy tales and folk tales, and I could imagine them. And I knew I was going to be a writer. I never knew what that meant.
I mean, I'll speak for myself. I think I became an actor because I was seen and heard, right, when I was acting, and I wasn't seen and heard as a child, and it gave me a creative playground to almost heal. And I think acting is very healing. And I do think a lot of actors come to it from that regard as a healing modality of some sort. But I also think with that, we tend to bring some baggage, right? Like I was bringing this baggage of like, I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve it, right? All the imposter syndrome. So I think to be a happy artist, I'll say that, to be a happy artist, I think it's really important. Can I just say to understand your bullshit? Can I just say that? Like, it's to understand your bullshit. Like what gets in your way? What keeps coming up over and over again? Where do you stop yourself? And being able to recognize it. And so many people don't, like you said, actors don't take responsibility, or even people don't take responsibility and play the victim because it's easier. But if you actually know, oh no, I'm just doing my thing again. Oh no, that imposter syndrome's kicking in. I can see it now. So I know how to reframe it. Like if we can bear witness to ourselves and call ourselves out on our own bullshit, then we can move forward and through it.
actors will say, oh, but I need this amount of time to prepare. I have to know the lines. I'm like, when you are, especially in a sitcom or a movie, as opposed to a play, you are playing yourself a little to the left, a little to the right. So I would say to somebody like you, how long have you been you, without saying numbers? You've been you a long time, right? Just bring that into the room. You don't have to prepare. You are you. You know that. But you're many colors. You've been many different people through your life. So just take out all the different crayons that you've been or want to be and just play. And the people that can play in the room are the people that get the jobs. Especially on a sitcom. I will give a note just because I know during the week lines can change. I don't want somebody rigid on that set because they're just going to have a mental breakdown. They have to be able to roll with whatever happens. And sometimes their parts expand. Sometimes they may get smaller for no reason, not because of them, just there could be a zillion reasons. So being flexible and having fun and just enjoying it. I mean, it's entertainment.
I am somebody that, as a teacher, I love to give back to, especially to young men and women and to children. And because, they are the ones who are inheriting the craft, not me. I'm already in the middle of my time. But the next generation is the one that we need to nurture right now.
So for young people who are interested, what would you advise them to do?
You can take any camera on a phone. You can get the app that is Stop Motion Pro, and that is a time lapse and also stop motion tool. You can add music. You can do this on your own. You can do paper cutouts of characters. You can use Lego to just create these animations. And I taught that to my daughter. And that's something the children would love to do with Minecraft characters. So it's something that they can do with their own toys. And they can learn the craft like that. They can even do green screen. I have a stop motion kit for children. Sometimes the parents come to me, he's 5. So there's a kit for it. And you can do it, just use your phone.
My associate photographer, Kayvon, he works a lot on TV film. This is coming from his experience. If you're going out, but you would like to go out more, what you should do is get a submission report and look and see what are the auditions you're not getting and which photos are you missing that go with those auditions. And so I call those the add-on looks. So you've got your staple. So I've had clients do this where, we've shot together and then 2 years later they come in, they're still using those headshots. They still look the same. But then it's like, okay, I'm not getting these auditions. And literally it's a list of their submission reports. And I think this is why, because I don't have that headshot. And then you can do that. The other thing that my associate swears by, he likes to just get a new headshot every year because and this is not so much data driven. I feel like the submission report, I think, is data driven information that helps you figure out what to do. His is, okay, if I get new headshots and I mix it up, then it's going to get noticed by casting directors who aren't calling me in with this headshot. And I feel like that's a legitimate point. But, if you're short on funds, I don't think that's necessary.
I think the thing that I've learned through life is healthy boundaries. You have to learn how to create healthy boundaries with people. Because sometimes what happens is you are so giving that they'll take the hand, te agarran el codo, and they swallow you.
Totally. And that's one thing that I've learned with him.
I've said no to projects where I've gone in and met the director and their producers are there and we're doing the scene. And there's just no, sometimes I walk away going, something about this just doesn't feel right. And I don't want to spend 22 days on this with this.
It's all a process and it's all trusting yourself. And your craft is going to grow and it's going to be the best that it's going to be when you have all of these other things in place. Because if all of this emotional and mental stuff is out of place, the craft is going to be hit and miss. It's not going to be stable.
Yeah, you don't want to have a career where you're dealing with a lot and you haven't dealt with your demons which is one of the reasons we also approach acting in a very holistic way. I've never, I learned Stanislavski. I learned Meisner, and we use some of it, but we don't use all of it, because one of the things that I learned is that when I started learning the craft, I didn't want to relive my past. I didn't want to have to go through that pain. Right. So what I learned, and this is something we have so in common, the way we learned how to act and how to cry and how to lie is I learned how I memorize my line is how I learned to memorize the feeling. So I learned to practice the feeling of crying, and that's how I cry. I don't go back to my past. I think it's so dangerous to have to relive your past to create a moment and bring it with you, because then you're gonna have that shit with you all day, and then
but
reliving it.
Who can sustain it? A lot of artists think that they can't live their life to the fullest. They don't have time to fall in love. They don't have time to have children. And it's like, no, those are the biggest gifts that you can give yourself, and that's only going to enrich your art. That's only going to enrich the artist in you. It's only going to give you more to bring to the table as an artist.
Plus, you learn to love somebody else before you love yourself, and get that ego thing, and that ego thing that is always with you, and you put the energy in loving somebody else and giving your energy.
Goodness,
it's
our
amazing.
children.
Most people in college make their first short. I'd made 3 shorts in high school and a documentary. So I went into college with my reel. And the first day of class, I majored in film production. The first day of class, I went to the dean of my school of communication. I said, hey, this is my reel. This is what I know how to do. Can I please have permission to do an independent film project? And he said, yes. I found out later, they thought I was a senior because I had such a huge reel. Because I never mentioned my age in that meeting. I just said, this is what I know how to do. So they said yes. So I ended up writing a script for a film I could produce on campus. And that first movie was a documentary about being a Christian during college, made that movie. And then when that was done, I said, you know what? I want experience writing a narrative, right? So I wrote another screenplay that I could film on campus about if Jesus came to earth as a college student, cast it and filmed it for $700. Oh my God. It was insanity. So by the time I graduated from college, I started my first company and had 2 films under my belt, put them on sale on Amazon, and you know what happened next.
No one is expecting an intern to come in with 30 years of experience or with the same level of experience that a professional person in the industry has. So the idea is that you're there to pick up learning experience. So don't be afraid to talk about what you're focusing on learning as opposed to throwing out those disclaimers. Back up what you say as a strength with credible examples. So if you say communication is a strength, talk about times where you had to do presentations. You know, the typical example that I give to students is if 2 people tell me, if I ask them, are you a strong person? And one person says, yeah, I'm pretty fit. And then the other person tells me how much they bench, how they go to the gym every other day. You know, they may not be as fit as the first person, but I'm going to bet on that second person being stronger because of the details that they gave me in their examples.
Some people get put into positions very quickly and they don't know. So they have to learn on the job. And sometimes you make mistakes. When you work in theater, you know it takes time for the lighting person to light you so that you look good. So when you're in a movie, it's the same thing. So you want to get on with the scene, but you realize that, hey, the cinematographer is doing his job and the lighting technician is doing his job to make you look good, you know, and to light the scene the way it should be for as the director desires. If you have no knowledge of that, you're going to say, what's taking so long? Okay, well, I want to get this over with. I want to get it done, you know? And then so the experience teaches you. I mean, Frank Sinatra, great talent, but he was only good on his first and second take. That was it. You know, so actors that worked with him had to learn to come up to speed right off the bat because you couldn't do 10 takes with him. Okay, and he's the star. So he's the one that controls the set. So even though it takes you as an actor, oh man, it takes me 10 takes to get me where I want to be. No, you got to do it on your first or second take because you're not going to get any more with Frank because he's the star.
New York, it's all about talent and about seriousness, and I felt that I belonged in New York. And when I went to Los Angeles, I didn't feel that I belonged that much, although I was booking some jobs, but not as many as I wanted.
You said you didn't feel like you belonged in LA. What was it that made you feel?
I found it to be superficial. You know, it was really weird. It was kind of surreal because I remember this. I remember actors saying, when I make it, I'm going to do this. When I make it, I'm going to do that. And I'm like, what are you going to make? A pie? what is this thing you're making? And that was quite weird because the focus in California was about being famous and being a star, and people talked about it like I was saying, oh, I'm going to study at the university.
Talking about the rehearsal process, because it's different from theater as it is from film or television. Yeah. How do you navigate it?
Yeah, I find it harder as I've gotten older, right? Because I want to trust my brain, and sometimes I don't. So it's a struggle sometimes. You know, I need time with the script these days to memorize and stuff. It helps, but I'm willing to jump in. You know, you jump in and you just kind of do it. And I rely. You know, when I look at a script, I'm really quick at it jumps at me what they're saying, what it is. Who is this guy? Oh yeah. And then of course, you know, there's all the Meisner stuff about asking questions, and I think the most important question of them all is, where have you just been? You know, you went to a room, you're coming from somewhere. So and then jump in, right? It's an important piece of information. I'm just working on an audition now for Winter's Tale, and one of the I finally got the handle on the character, and I have to think, what did he just do? He's coming into the scene, so I need some kind of life that's going to bring me into the scene. So it's interesting, and then you know, theater you get a chance to rehearse, and in TV you know how quick they go, and it's a wild ride, you know. And even in film, if you're doing indie films, you don't have time. You got to go in. You got to know your lines, and then they don't have time. They don't have the money.
My voiceover career, it started, like I told you, with Dark and Lovely, and then I would get a little something here and a little something there, and then the '80s, Burger King was one of the products that Uniworld advertising agency. They had this,
and Uniworld was a big, and still is a big, black advertising agency.
Right. They got the account, and it was a $30 million account.
Wow.
And they called me in, and they asked me to audition. And so I beat out everybody else. I got the account. They gave me this $30 million voice-over account. Now, I didn't get $30 million.
Right.
But that was what they were paying the advertising agency for the account. And I ended up doing Burger King for about 8 years. I did all of their the television and the radio for the ethnic market, for the black market. And that went on for about 8 years.
The best tool that you have as an actor is the life that you've lived up until this moment. I learned to know people, and I treat them as individuals. Every actor is different. Every human being is different. We all feel things differently. That's why no one technique is right for everyone, any one actor. Every actor has to put together a toolkit, you know? So I respond to this. I don't respond to that. I love doing this kind of improv. When I need to cry, I do this. When we learn all different things. And so that's why I teach a combination of things. I try to come from kindness first, because I truly believe that you need to know where your strengths are first, and then the other, it's more comfortable to grow. Once you feel comfortable and you develop some confidence as an actor, then you start getting in there and digging on the other stuff. I don't really like to tear people apart.
Crying
is for some reason easier for women than it is for men. And I just blame society. I just blame that society tells men that they can't and shouldn't cry. And then you want to be an actor and you come to me for coaching, and I have a lot of chipping to do away at what society has done to guys. So when I get a young man in my presence, if the parent is there, I'll tell them, don't suppress their emotions in home. The kid wants to cry, let them. Don't say boys don't cry. That's not okay. Because if he wants to be an actor, he has to be open to emotion. In my life, my personal life, I remember dating someone. When we went to the movies, I would cry like a baby, and he'd be like, oh, why are you always crying? And I remember thinking, thank God I cry. Like, thank God I'm open, because I would be a terrible actor if I was really sealed off and couldn't cry. And so I think as actors, we have to defend and protect ourselves. I love to watch the news, but sometimes the news makes me cry, and I need to know when is enough, right? Like when I need to protect my energy so that it's there when I need it.
We as Black creators and creatives have often been in the space where we felt we had to censor ourselves or rein it in, or, but to be in a space where you can speak and be understood. Even, I say there's not one experience. So I'm from here and they're from there, and some of them grew up in Canada, and some of them came over, and some of them are more mature writers who've been they were new, older writers, and I was like, new writers aren't all 19, they bring in. So it was for me, it was a challenge, but it was a challenge worth taking on, because I will never forget to sit in this room and say, look around this table. I've never seen this in my life.
They had a program with the Lower East Side Tenement Museum where we wrote plays about immigrants that lived at 97 Orchard Street. And we would get like a dossier. Here's the history of the family. And the students, the young people would learn about census and how you find information on people. And so I would help them craft plays. And I'm sort of like, I'm like kind of writing it, but I'm not. I structure it, and then I give everybody a scene, and then they write the dialogue. So that helped a lot in terms of like taking facts and then dramatizing them and then bringing them to life. And because you just don't want to go see a biopic that's like scene 1, this happened, scene 2, this happened, scene 3. You want to give it metaphor. So one year we did the women's suffrage movement, and like what's happening now, like there's always, voting is always being marginalized, because if you really leave it to the people, the people are going to vote for climate change and universal health care and education and like all social programs. So at that time they were trying to limit, of course, women's vote, and then the immigrants' vote. So there was a huge coalition between immigrants and women. So at the time, there were all these ads taken out in paper and newspapers about what would happen if women voted, like women would go crazy. So we took all those ads and we made them interludes in between the scenes.
Bringing the arts to areas of the community where arts would not otherwise exist, which is just a fabulous mission. And it was a new organization then. And so I began to just do what I knew how to do, which was to create these artists in residency projects. There was a lot of money then to do these projects in the prison system, in the California prison system. Artist in Residence is a title actually that was set up by the California Arts Council. I think you can find these programs around the country. They mean different things. But in California, it means that an artist is paid to be in a place of their choosing, which could be a school, could be an institution, could be a community center, could be in a building in a neighborhood, and to be there as a fine artist, sharing your skills either as a teacher or a project leader with people from that community that will come and work with you. So it is just one of the most exciting ways to be embedded in where you want to be in a community setting, doing what you love to do.
You know, I could see that theater was changing people. It was impacting people's lives. And the act of doing it, of creating something, of building trust with each other, of being in an ensemble, of, you know, learning how to use your body to express, owning one's own story, like that changes something inside of us. But I didn't quite understand how that related to psychology. And so in Liberia, I was noticing, you know, a lot of the young people we worked with had severe trauma in Liberia and had moved to this refugee camp. And, you know, I noticed symptoms that I didn't quite understand. Seizures. I mean, these were severe traumas. Some of these young boys had been child soldiers. Some of them had witnessed their families killed. I mean, it was severe trauma. And along with it came, you know, physical symptoms and also kind of a need to connect and feel validated and seen and have a space to kind of share stories.
So often we spiral down because we allow ourselves to spiral down. We're like, oh, this, and we keep just going down the rabbit hole. It's like, catch yourself. Oh, okay, I'm feeling fear. Oh gosh, that's what that is. That is mean. That is some mean fear trying to mess with my day right now. Like trying to disempower the fear when you catch it. I think that is such an immediate, like tendency that is often overlooked. It can be a little challenging at first to realize that's what you're feeling. Sometimes we feel it like we're already like further down. But I think when we start looking at things and we're like, oh, like I give a tool, it's called the caddy technique. It's a little tool I developed for my younglings where if you look at like fear and anxiety as like, you know, those little cats that are like, you know, like they're like the ones that like hiss at you and you're like, dang, what are you doing? You know, if you think of fear and anxiety in that way and you're like, oh, it's just this little cat trying to like claw me. It's like, oh, no. Step back, accept that you're feeling this. Okay, Giovanna, I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety. That doesn't feel good, but it is what it is. The T is for temporary. This too shall pass. It's gonna move through you. Don't wallow in it, right? You're not alone. You're not the only one that's feeling fear. You're not, because I remember myself, like I remember being like, I'm the only one that's scared to raise my hand. I'm the only one that's scared to go in front of the classroom. I'm the only one. And it was always like me. Oh my gosh. And that just like put even more heaviness, more doom and gloom. Like, oh my gosh, I'm alone in this big bad world. Nobody gets me because I'm the only one that's insecure and scared. It's like, no. First of all, we all are. It's human nature, tendency. It's our mechanism, the way we were created. It's like once we like liberate that like feeling of like, no one gets me, I'm the only one, then like you show up differently. You're like, you know what? It's just a different way of approaching situations. So I do feel like, you know, catching it early on really is a big, huge beneficial component of dealing with fear and anxiety. Because then if you don't catch it early on, the spiral goes down to like ultimately depression and it gets really dark and ugly.
You think that life is going to start one day? It's now. Start it now. It's happening. So if it's happening, then you better, two things, not one negative thought. Not one negative thought. That means you have to stay positive about everything. That means you have to spin anything that happens to you into a positive. I mean, horrific things can happen. Trust me, when you're my age, lots of shit can happen. But what you've got to do is take it and go, well, what can I gain from this? Well, how can I learn from it? How am I actually a better person that it happened? How am I more empathetic in the world? How do I relate more to others because of it? How am I more human? And then to know that, since life is a process, acting is a process too. It's a way of living life everything that happens to you will be used for your work. And so when you go to approach a scene, you have to sit down with it and hold that scene and enjoy that scene and look at it and go, I get to do this. Gosh, we're so lucky.
The reason why most people are in this business is because they've suffered some pretty strong pain in their lives. So we're all in this together. And I feel like if you can't expose yourself through your work and the things that have in the past caused you shame, is bravery. And bravery is sexy. There's something just so powerful and sexy about somebody that's brave. And so bravery, I think it takes more bravery to expose what's really happening in your heart, and it makes you feel vulnerable, than it does to cross 10 buses on a motorcycle and to climb Mount Everest, because it's really, it's scary to expose that stuff.
People say, how do I choose what acting school I'm shopping? And I always say, it's not that complicated. When you go somewhere from Yelp that has reviews, or when the highest level of talent has emanated from one school, there's ways to see statistical proof. So the proof is what you're looking for. Do people who teach not do other things? Do people who are looking for acting schools find them by meeting someone, watching an acting class? Watching an acting class is very deceptive because you might like it one day, and if you went and the next day, hate it. So it's really like, where do the people that succeed, who were at the level that I was at, go? That's the way that I think you want to look at things. I don't want to be a shopper. I want to look at the statistical results of who had that heart operation, what doctor did it, and who lived. That's kind of the way I look at it.
We go into audition technique, teach them how to audition, live auditions, Zoom auditions. Throughout the process, they always do every lesson or starts with articulation exercises, with voice exercises, physical exercises, improvisation games. Then goes main event. And then in the end of the lesson, we always ask them reflecting questions like, what did you like about today's lesson? Why? We give them opportunity to share their voice, their opinion, express themselves. Or we can ask questions like, what is the most beautiful country that you have traveled to, and what did you like about the culture of the people that you've met there? So this kind of questions, so thought-provoking questions that make them think about important things. And then professional level, we start with Disney Nick material, because it's a hard material. It's comedy, it's rhythm, it's knowing how the structure of the joke. It's pretty intense material, so they go a few rounds of that. Then they go into self-tapes, that they make self-tapes at home, they bring them to the lesson, the teacher gives them feedback about it. Emotional preparation, how to come into the scene not empty but already being in a certain state that you from the previous scene, right? We do amazing exercises about that. And professional 2 starts with the hardcore drama.
I would watch as many episodes as I possibly could. And as time went on, I realized I didn't want to see all the episodes. I wanted to see the best episodes. And I would watch those episodes over and over again, and I'd see what worked, what didn't work. If I was confused about certain things, I would be honest about it and say, I understand you guys are looking for this, but I don't see that in this script or in this scene or whatever the situation may be. But yes, there was a lot of pressure to deliver an episode that was consistent with what they consider to be their sort of benchmark, which could have been the pilot. Most of the time it's the pilot or the first episode that sells the series. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes, they have a bit of a slow start and they're looking for that one episode that clicks. And it may be episode 5 or 6 before they finally get everything to come together. If you're lucky as a guest director, you do that. And if you do that for them, then you're sitting in a cat seat, because they'll want you back. And, that gives you an opportunity to express yourself and feel more comfortable to sort of try different things that may be a little bit outside of what they normally are looking for.
As the editor, you're working with a finished puzzle piece. Like, the production crew gets to decide what the puzzle is going to be, but it's in pieces. I get to piece the puzzle together and hope it's as close as possible to their vision. Sometimes they're like, hey, we didn't know the tree would look cool on this side of the puzzle. We like that you did that. And it's really interesting how sometimes, like, a lot of the biggest, most elevating changes are just going, what if we went boop, 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 boop? And oh my God, it works. Like it's so crazy how just sometimes just like not saying like, no, it's not working. Just being like, what if I just put this here? And what if I just flip this? Oh, what if I just, whoop, okay. Oh, wow, it's working. Okay. Like, oh wait, I just moved this. I wasn't even trying to do that, but that's a good idea. Like it just like, it's editing so cool because there is, of course there is a right and a wrong way to do it. There's a technical aspect you have to know, but once you're in it, once you know the technical stuff, you can do whatever you want. I can make the video upside down right now. I can make the video black and white here and sepia in the other one and then normal colored. Like I get to decide what happens now. So what do I want to make? How creative do I want to be? How much fun do I want to have?
That's how they look at us as actors. What can you do? Can you do anything for me in the pursuit of telling my story, in the service of a story, the service of this movie, of this TV series, of this play? You may give the most incredible audition. Doesn't always matter. Maybe you're too tall to go against the leading lady, or too short. Maybe the casting director didn't like the color of your socks that day. Maybe you gave a boss audition, but the studio might have another actor under contract. They got to give that actor that particular job. So there's always, and I mean almost always in this industry, so many different variables and elements that come into if you're cast or not. Almost the least of which is how good you are. Almost the least of which, you got to be great. You have to be great, but you have to be great for when it's your moment and it's your time when everything aligns. And it does align. It does happen. But that's why this is not an easy business. That's why, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You know this. It's not an easy business. And it takes a lot. It takes a thick skin to deal with the rejection that comes into play. But that was my first lesson when I got to New York, is that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if we don't cast you, get over it. It's not personal. And even if it is personal, get over it. Next.
When you're looking for the story you are going to tell that delivers on what your show is about, you could do a premise pilot, which writers tend to like because we get to give all that backstory, and it lays it out. But networks or streamers tend to like the other one because they can say, well, this is what the show is going to be week in and week out. Both work. Both are great. It's a choice you make when you create your show, but it has to do with what story are you telling. So character, premise, story, and in the words of the people who first taught me, scripts are easy, stories are hard. You need that great story in order to make a great pilot.
In working in the business, I've come across a lot of peers that we all have our own hopes, dreams, and goals, right? And a lot of us, we're here grinding away every single day, being production assistants, doing the dirty work so that way these shows can continue to run. But on the back end of it, we don't have enough time to be able to pour into ourselves, into our own projects, into the creative outlets that we want to give ourselves to be able to further our careers or just our ambitions. And in doing this project, I wanted to bring together a core group of people that I was really cool with, that I knew would work well with each other and would say, hey, like, yes, I know that I'm the writer, I'm the actor, my face is on the poster and all of that. Like, I get that. However, I believe in this group of people. I believe in the stories that we want to tell. I believe in who we are individually and collectively to be able to move forward with each other and say, we want to continually put out stories. We want to be the change that we want to see in this industry. And we want to hold each other accountable in being able to do that. So that way it was more than just me. It's about everybody here saying this can be a launching pad.
Whether you're in the rehearsal room for theater or you're on the set,
rehearsing for a TV show or film, the director's going to set that tone. So if the director has set the tone that they're not interested in what the actors have to say, or their ideas, then that may cause an actor to respond. And I don't blame them. That's, not a great atmosphere to be in. But the director has to set the tone, and every director is different. And so I think, actors are going to have good experiences and they're going to have bad. They're going to have both. But I think reading the room is really important, right? Like, is this director open to me saying this? And it's reading the room is some people aren't able to, and it's a skill that you have to acquire, because you don't need to get into an argument or you don't want to have a problem with the director, but you can tell. I mean, when I'm in a rehearsal room, I want to know what the actors are important to me, play development and their ideas, and I want to know, but I'm also very clear in the beginning about that, and I'm very nurturing and welcoming. Like there's an energy that I have that people aren't afraid to approach me.
I just kind of sat for, I'd say a good 6 months to a year, and was just trying to figure out how, what am I going to do? And I didn't get depressed because I was still on the air. Clay Berry and I still did the Sunday Classics. It was just, the Sunday Classics without Hal Jackson at that time. But I kept my photography going, and I kept taking pictures, and I kept traveling. That was the one thing that he instilled in me. You need to see the world. You need to take time for yourself. And one of the first things that I did was I took a trip to the British Virgin Islands by myself, a solo trip, which I'd never done before. But I did know someone down there. Neil Blyden was there, and he took care of me. He made sure that I was okay. But and that was like I said, it was the first time I did a solo trip. So therefore, I met a young lady there who was from France. Her and I became friends, and we're still in contact with each other. So it taught me that I could be me, and I didn't have to have somebody else with me, because for 30-something years, he was there. But I learned, and I became a very independent individual.
You said something about how we're visual people as actors, and I heard, we've talked about this before, but people are starting to make mind movies, they call them, and it's basically a vision board that you put to music, and it's all of the things that you imagine for yourself, and it's putting it to a song. I think people did it in varying ways, and I've never done it before, but I'm thinking about it because it's nice to like wake up to something.
I love it.
And just, like put on, we both have the same favorite song, She's a Bad Mama Joe. That inspires me to get going and get up and do something cool. So it's like, if you're watching all of your goals and imagining them like happening in front of you, that's pretty motivating. Sometimes if you just wake up and the first thing you do is, check your email, check your phone, and you're not being intentional, like you said.
Right, put that in front of you first.
In show business, those that really get stuff done trust their instincts. I want to work with that person. I'm not going to work with that person. There's something, their energy is off. Well, you're into energy? No, there's a certain thing where this is going to be a fun journey. This is not going to be a fun journey. And I think when you have quiet moments, or you pray, or you meditate, it allows you to hear. And then once you can hear what's going on, and then you can say, oh, that's what's happening. Oh, okay. I think a lot of times people don't trust their instincts. Like, I know I should not be working with this person. I know this is not the right project. I know. And instead of listening to that voice, they go, no, it's going to work out. I can make this executive really love me. This cast is going, and I've learned over the years, like, when it doesn't feel right, or I get that warning signal in my brain, warning, Will Rogers, I listen. And I think a lot of people in this business don't listen.
The importance of purpose, doubling down on your purpose, drilling down and getting your focus even more together, getting your purpose even more together, finding those comrades, finding those people who are joined with you in the struggle. We have to invest in our own communities. Our community has to invest in this art, in this theater, not in Ren, but in the vision that Ren and others have to make sure that the arts and the civility of the arts and the teaching tool that is represented by the arts, and to come into a theater chamber and to leave seeing yourself more whole is vitally important. And as I said earlier, each people should tell its own stories. And we have to continue to tell our stories. You know, we have talked about Black people and Africans before we were Black and colored and Negro. That we talked about, we're griots, we come out of an oral tradition. Well, we have to begin writing as well. We certainly do write, and we have written across many years, but leaning into we're an oral people and we come out of an oral tradition. Yes, let that be the tradition we come out of. Let's maintain that. But additionally, let's begin to document and memorialize these histories through the writing.
Social media, it's putting yourself in front of people more so you're remembered. So I know, like, there's so many actual tangible examples, but you take an acting class, follow the people in your acting class that are active on social media. They end up doing a film themselves or with a friend and book you. And then now you have a job and a connection, and then they get bigger, right? You're on set. You make a connection with the second AD. You know, that second AD is going to become a first AD and then hopefully a director. And then now you have a friend and a connection. You know, I know people that were reluctant to social media, started posting videos. They were funny and they gained a huge following, and then now make more money on brand deals because they did that and took that step, and get more commercial and acting work because they have a following.
It's not until you walk it out till you really understand that I kept myself away from my blessings because I was always taught this. This is the only way I knew. I always saw that my mother did that. And that was the only way I knew. And when she took away those beliefs, like, oh, I can't have those things. Why can't I? Oh, I have a relationship with God. I can call on him right now. I don't have to wait till Sunday. I don't have to wait for someone to pick up the phone at church to answer something I need to know. I'm in a dire need. I can reach him myself.
The biggest thing is, I think, when you're green, you don't realize that you have to respect the taste of whoever's show it is, right? You just think comedy's comedy and I'll go in and I'll be funny, but you don't realize some people love really over-the-top comedy. Some people love physical comedy. Some people love dry comedy. They all have such different tastes. And so it's like starting to adjust to, okay, let me first understand what their taste is so I can properly deliver. But I think it was really hard for me because I love really absurd, over the top characters, and there would be certain sketches that just didn't call for that. And so, you know, the creator would be like, it's just a little too, you know, big for this one. I think this one should really have an accent. And in my head, I'm like, but don't we want every character to be as different as possible? We don't want to use our own voices. We want to really switch it up. And she's like, I understand that. But for this one, I think it benefits us more to remove the accent, to remove the wig that's kind of over the top, and just let it be a human being and find the humor in that. And so it just, honestly, I think it forces you to humble yourself and get out of your ego and be like, I have to deliver because now I have bosses.
You'd always say, I wish all of you success and none of you fame. And I was like, I don't know what that means. But he does, and he's coming from a very wise place. So you better listen to him, Spence. So I don't chase fame, I chase success. And success for me, I've never defined this for anyone before, but did I do my job? Did I show up prepared, excited, and executes what I went in there to do, to achieve my objective despite obstacles, to the best of my ability, not based upon the outcome, whether I got the role or not. And that's kind of a John Wooden, the former UCLA basketball coach. That was his pyramid of success, was going in and doing your job, and not worrying about the outcome. Maybe the ball goes in the hoop, maybe it doesn't. But did you do everything you could to prepare for that moment? and execute it to the greatest of your potential.
It's important in your work, like bringing your brand to the audition. I think it's important because I always say actors don't want to be typecast, but in a way, you do. You want to be typecast because you want people to know what type you are in order to cast you. So typecast is a good thing till you get to the point in your career where people absolutely trust you and they will say, well, yeah, bring her in. I bet she could do that. But if you try to do everything in the beginning, people are confused. Like, well, I don't know who are, what can they do? They have a clown outfit there and a suit on here. It's too confusing. So you want to hone in on what your most castable self is in the beginning so people know you, so they know how to call you in. And then hopefully you'll book those jobs and then they'll call you in more. And then once they book you a couple times, they're a little bit more apt to think, well, let's try him for this because you've made them look good. And everybody is trying to further their career in this career. Everybody. We just happen to be at the bottom of the totem pole.
For me, quality is extremely important. So I am not going to do things just for the sake of doing them. So if I'm going to do an audition, I'm going to do it well. If not, then don't even bother to do it, right? I rarely pass on auditions because I realize what a gift they are. But whenever I recognize that there's something that is just, I'm not going to be able to provide the quality I need because that character will require perhaps speech training or something that I'm just like, I'm not going to get this done well, then I don't do it. And so my managers and my reps are very aware that for me to say no to something, they know it's because I'm not going to be able to hit what I know I'm capable of. I would just need more time. So either they give me an extension or we're going to have to pass on this one. But being the best advocate for myself because quality matters to me so much. If I'm going to do a short film, the production value is going to be the best one I can provide. So I'm not just going to record something on my phone and put it out there. No, there's something wrong with that, but it's just not who I am.
I categorize the steps to the process. So if in fact it's a dialect, okay, I'm gonna do Trini, I'm gonna do a girl from Trinidad, and and the rhythm is so important. It is so important, and so then we start with the rhythm. We start with the rhythm first, and then what I do is I give them music from Trinidad. I tell them a little bit about the culture and why Trini sounds a little bit different than Jamaica because of the Indian influence in Trini. So you got the Indians and you got the African, you got the brown people, and you got the black people, and you give them a little bit of the background and a little bit of story, and then I start with the rhythm because that once you sort of get into the rhythm and you start playing with the rhythm, then I bring on the notes. And I speak in musical terms quite often.
Inviting someone out is a strategic move. You're inviting someone out to get to know them, and so they can get to know you. So you solidify the relationship, so they can think about you when things come up. As a part comes up, oh, there's that guy, he took me out, or this girl, she took me out, and it's good to make that connection because if they think of you when you're not around, that's when you want them to think about you, when you're not around. But I think you have to do something that actually gets them to remember you. And going out, even to have a hamburger or a cup of coffee at a Starbucks or whatever, they will then remember, oh yeah, she took me to go get a frappuccino latte, whatever. And so if you have that conversation with them, and you're actually getting a lot out of this too, because when you stop talking and maybe ask the question, I find that a lot of people tend to want to talk about themselves too.
So what is your budget? What is your bare bones living budget? Right? The reason why I say bare bones is because if you're not working and you're only going to live off the money that you earn from your creative job, when we talked about that feast and famine, but then you need to know how much money is it going to take, which is going to add into how much you're going to need to save in order to survive, right? So if you know that because you don't want to lose your house, your car, you need to be able to eat. And if you have medical, and especially if you're paying it out of your pocket, you want to be able to continue that. So you want to make sure that you have enough money saved up so that you can continue to pay those things when you don't have a check.
I had to make sure that I understood that it's okay to teach children, to teach others responsibility. And that responsibility came from showing them the value of helping them understand the value of the choices that they make, and to make sure that they and I continue to make decisions based on what we really care about, not what somebody else has told us, not what somebody else has created as this is the goal that you should achieve. No, the goal that I should achieve is the one that I have established for myself through my relationship with God. That's the goal that I should achieve. And anything other than that, I should let it go. So it's a whole mindset change that we have to have.
I called a friend of mine over at DreamWorks one time, and the lady who answered the phone, she picked up the phone. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" She said, "Living the dream." And I thought it was so amazing because if you really think about it, we really are living our dreams, literally. Okay, I say all the time, I don't have a job. I hang with my friends and make money. I hang with cool people and do cool shit. That's literally what my job is. Okay, I'm very blessed to do that. But here's my point. There are people who have responsibilities. They have children they got to take care of. They have a mortgage. They have kids they got to keep in school. They have real things they got to worry about every day. But a lot of us, hey, we're free to skip down the street and have an audition. A lot of those people are going to hate your guts. So be quiet. That's all I'm saying. Move in silence. Your work will speak louder than anything you could ever say.
I guess because I had no roadmap, I had no idea. Like when I came out of I remember going to my guidance counselor in high school and told him, I said, I want to be an actor. And I might as well have told him I wanted to be an astronaut. He had no clue as to what to tell me, you know. And instead of doing a little research and telling me to, you know, maybe you should apply to this institution called Juilliard or the American Conservatory Theater or the American Academy of Dramatic Arts or something like that, he didn't have a clue. So I would go to the library and I'd pick up books about people who have done it, you know, and that was pretty much how I started reading biographies, and I still read them all the time now. If I hear about somebody who's written one, I'll probably run over to Bookstore and pick one up because I just enjoy it. I like seeing how they got from A to Z. You know what I mean?
Community is so important in helping us to create real lasting changes in our lives. And one of the wonderful things about the internet is that it gives us access to community that we wouldn't have next door or 10 minutes down the road. And so changing community is going to be really important because it's going to be really difficult to maintain a change in mindset when you're in the same space every day with people that talk the same, that, you know, act the same and respond to you in ways that are not positive and it's not supportive of the changes that you would like to make in your life. And so finding communities that is thinking the way you are or would like to think, people who foster a mindset and a behavior and attitude on life like what you would like to have, then we find those communities and stay in those communities because that will help us.
Another thing when I'm teaching people, sometimes I'll do this and I always say, I'm never saying no to you. It's just a great way to release tension in your neck. So, you know, we can do little movements. You know, I'm in a scene and maybe I raise my shoulders. No, yeah, but I'm testing my shoulders to see, oh, am I holding tension? I don't know, you know, and then I just check and you can make it work. You know, a big culprit is a lot of people hold tension in the back of their knees. So by the way, if you're in the middle of a scene and you're feeling tense, make sure you are breathing. And again, what I mean by breathing is that you are exhaling. I'm not sure I said this already, but it bears repeating if I have. Your exhalation is where your relaxation is. That's where you can let go and be present and fully present and really connect to either your scene partner, or if you're doing something for an audience, to connect to your audience.
It's very crucial that people understand verse and iambic pentameter, because that's the rhythm that, in all of its variations, and there are lots of variations, as we're going to find out today, the iambic pentameter rhythm is crucial that you understand it, that you know what it is. That's what the thoughts are laid on, this beat. If you think about the thoughts as the melody is laid over this beat. And the beat has a lot of different variations on it, but it also helps you to find the meaning of the material that you're working on. I always use sonnets because they're complete in themselves. And I find that if you're working on a play, a section of a play, a monologue or soliloquy, a lot of times the actors haven't read the play. And so they don't have the context.
All this selling that I've been doing of actors, agenting and managing, it's creative, but very limited. And it wasn't exactly feeding my soul. And it was limited because you're limited by the clients that you have. So if you have 30 clients and you're trying to match actors to roles on a breakdown on paper, and this is all you've got to pull from, it's very limited. But when I went into casting, now I'm using my vision. Now I'm interpreting characters that are on a page. Now I'm collaborating with another artist, a director who has a vision. And based on my knowledge of actors, based on my knowledge of the characters, I can sort of come up with this vision that I think that is appropriate. And then which is like a puzzle, and then I can begin to assemble all the puzzle pieces to put it together.
This is the pitfall of the entertainment business, is that you get into this beautiful routine if you're fortunate enough to be working in a way that your work is visible and seen by billions of people. And then all of a sudden something switches somewhere, and has nothing to do with you or what you've done, but I don't know what changed, and I stopped being asked to do anything. And I just fell apart because I lost my own sense of self-worth, and I only saw myself as being valuable when I was being creative on a big scale. And it's a terrible pitfall. And you see it happening with so many celebrities where they turn to drugs, major drugs. I'm not talking about marijuana. I'm talking about major drugs, and or this obsession with being past the point of necessarily needing to go out and do another tour, but they can't live without the love and screaming and
the adulation,
applause and the adulation of these billions of fans. They don't know how to live without it. Even though they might have beautiful home lives, children, all of that, there's something that takes over and somehow makes them believe that their worth comes as their art, as being an artist.
Those are demons. Those are demons, because after your breakdown, you had an incredible breakthrough, or at least that's what I saw. Was you then it was like your creativity went global in a whole nother way.
They say teach somebody how to fish. They can feed themselves for a lifetime. Give them the fish, they feed themselves for a day. And I think a lot of coaching is giving actors fish for a day. And I know for me, if I got coached and then I'm in the audition and I'm just trying to remember, say it like this, do it like that, do it like this. Versus if I have a technique, and that technique, and I think this is where also another thing where acting technique, like what is acting technique, right? Ballet has a technique, right? They do the same to every single, from Baryshnikov, from the top dancer to the 5-year-old who's in ballet class. They all learn this bar technique. That bar technique, releves and plies, is what lets them, when they jump, they fly, right? Because that technique is just built into them and it's habitual.
It was a lot of luck, being in the right place at the right time, and a lot of taking risks, because sometimes you have to take a risk as a creative person. And my family, I come from a very large family. I'm one of 8 kids. So part of my energy comes from that fact. I'm child number 6. There's only 2 younger than I. And so at the dinner table, to get attention, you had to, put yourself out there. And so I got very sort of comfortable demanding attention. And I don't mean that in pay attention to me. I just mean commanding attention. And my family all had a great sense of humor, and that helps a lot.
I'll just quickly list the 7 major fears that I speak about in my book that I feel prevent us from going to our next level, whatever that is. And I challenge anybody I work with and my readers, of course, to just check in, do a self-check-in to see which one or ones resonate. And that's fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of success, fear of not being good enough, fear of competition, fear of not having enough, and fear of time running out. And you would think it's the senior citizens who are thinking about the time running out. No, it's the 25-year-olds who are worried about that.
We often look at the end goal. We're going to be famous. We're going to make a lot of money. But you got to love the process. You got to fall in love with rehearsal. You got to be excited about it. I'm going to put on my sweats and I'm going to do my stretches and I'm going to rehearse today. I've got to call 20 theaters today or write a crafted email. You got to love that part too, or you're in the wrong business. That's the walking. The destination is the movie's done, the check clears, all that stuff. But the walking is all the work before you get there. So you better be loving you some walking. Because if it's just to get to the destination, you won't last. It's impossible. You have to be genuinely passionate.
Inner monologue is all about, as I tell them, chewing the food, chewing the information, right? I said, you ever eat an apple? Sure. Do you eat it like take a bite and just swallow it? No, that would hurt. Right. You got to chew it. You got to chew it. That's what you do when you're listening to somebody. You're oh, okay. Or whatever it is. The big mistake that people make with inner monologue is they're not just thinking. They're, I said, so what are you thinking? Well, I'm thinking that years ago when, whoa, give me a word. A word? Yeah. What are you thinking? I don't know. Yes, that's the word. That's it. Right? So mom's saying something to you and you're like, I don't know, this is whatever. But it's simple. It's all about simplicity and specificity.
I mean, who would play Medea if they weren't the kind of actor that embraced whatever was on the page? Who would play any of the Shakespearean villains? Who would play the drug lords and the killers? Who would play Ted Bundy unless they were the kind of actor that thought, ooh, delicious stuff that I get to devour, and how fun is this going to be? So those are the kinds of actors that I gravitate to, the ones who say I get to, and not the ones that are complaining and making life miserable for everybody.
Your consistency off camera is what makes on camera work. People think that you just show up and it's just, no, right? When actors become the people that they're supposed to be for their parts, it's work off camera that has to get done. It is work off camera that they have to practice, that they have to embody. And so the work that you do on your social media is the same exact thing. It's showing who you are and who you can be, who you can transform into, right?
Forgetting that the individuals that you're talking to are human beings. I think that's probably the biggest faux pas. You're forgetting that this is a human being. They breathe, they eat, they sleep, everything like you. And so oftentimes we can be so excited that we forget to connect with just interpersonal communication. We forget that. And that could throw off the whole conversation versus just introducing yourself, understanding timing is key. Oftentimes, whoever you want to talk to, a lot of people want to talk to. And when that person is done speaking on stage, whether if they're a panel or if they're just present, they may have a line, they may have people crowding around them, and you're just trying to figure out how to get in that crowd. And so I think it's also important to pay attention. Like if you've noticed that individual just talked to 20 people, unfortunately, it may be harder to engage with them in that moment, and it's nothing personal. They just may be tired, And so I think it's important to know what tools to pull out when you need to pull them out. So I think the biggest thing is not being observant of the moment.
Be proud of your heritage. Be proud of who you are, because we're able to market that easier to casting. So I feel like people used to kind of bury and try to fit in with the masses, where now to be different is better, to be unique. Like, if it's any special languages you speak or whatever it is, like we want to find your uniqueness, because that's what's going to help sell you to casting. So I think if you're new to Hollywood, I think you know who you are. You don't have to, everybody, I feel as though there was a time when everyone pretended to be something they weren't, because they thought that was going to help them get cast, or that was going to help them fit in better. Now it's we want to see the real you. Like, casting wants to see the real you. Like, don't bury it, especially like your background and like who you are at your core. If you grew up in, let's say, Arkansas, or wherever it is that you grew up, and you have those roots, you don't have to hide it just because you're in Hollywood. I feel like, because especially if you're new, you're still grounding yourself as into this new plethora of this industry, that you're pretending to be something else, but you're still you on the inside. So it's like, don't try to go from 0 to 100 to become and morph into a new character. Take who you are at their core and bring that into the character.
We sometimes set up unrealistic expectations for ourselves as almost an excuse to go back to old patterns of beating ourselves up, and I know for me, I've recognized those what I would call liabilities in myself that I know I have to watch, because I came from a very Southern household, religious household, Catholic school, Seventh-day Adventist elementary school. So I've grown up in boxes. And so in those boxes, there are lots of rules. So there's consequences. You break a rule, consequence. And so as a creative, I realized that no longer serves me, period. And giving myself permission to not just be creative in my work and in my art, but being creative in my systems and in how I appreciate myself and how I look at things and go, okay, well, this month you can relax in this area a little bit, or you can explore something else. It doesn't have to be so rigid. But again, when it's familiarity, you want to go with it seems like your mind tends to just go with what they know, which is get rigid. And if you don't get it all done, then beat yourself up. This is, the cycle that you're familiar with. So I'm learning to definitely
That's why that challenge of self-care and everything was just so amazing, because it's like, oh, that's giving myself permission to really explore different ways of taking care of the artist.
As long as you have a 0.5% of that you know in your soul with your whole body, that there's a 0.5% in you that will deserve and will get the career of your dreams, the career that you want to have. If there's at least 0.5% in your soul, in your body that believes it, that's all it counts. Because more likely than not, we keep swimming in this society of meritocracy. What have you done? Who do you work with? What are you doing? What awards do you have? What project? What comes next? That sometimes it's just so overbearing. And if you stop for a second and look behind you and see everything that you've gone through, everything that you've put into your effort in your career and in the dream and the life that you want, that stop and looking back is what really fuels you into understanding that you are extraordinary. And if you don't believe you are extraordinary, then no one else is going to believe it.
As we begin to share our story or prepare to share our story, one, we're going to get to the point where we are comfortable with that we've had to process through it so that when we tell the story, it's known that it's our story. There's no separation from it. And we have to be, mindful not to get other people to start chiming in on the story, because then all of a sudden that story gets out there and that's not really your story. That's not even the story you really want to tell. And so now when you get opportunities to go and talk about it and speak about it, and they're referring to something that wasn't even part of what you were talking about. So we have to be mindful as we're coached that we don't lose that.
So I go in and I read for this thing. I'm from Harlem. I know how to be tough. I had on my denim jacket with my red, black, and green on it. So I'm ready, and I walk in, I'm doing my little thing with him, and he loved it. Now, my mom's right outside the door. And they had auditioned a lot of people, but like I said, Kathy Dowd always sent me in during the callback. So there was only maybe 3 other people, and then they were gone. And of course, along the whole way, I'm constantly running with Lawrence Fishburne, Giancarlo Esposito. I didn't see Ralph Carter as much, but we knew of each other because we were all right there together. But Giancarlo and Lawrence and their moms and my mom, we were always seeing each other on auditions, and one of us would book it or another of us would book it. And we didn't feel competitive, but we knew that we were really going against each other. Anyways, I ended up being the only one screen testing for this movie now. And I'm in it with Mel Shavelson, who's the director. He ultimately became the president of Screen Actors Guild.
Okay.
Mel Shavelson. So after I finished, he says, "That was nice. That was really good, Haywood. But I need you to do me a favor." I said, "Yeah, what's that?" And he was like, "I want you to really get gritty, hardcore. Come on, man. Give me that anger. Give it all to me." And I knew what he kind of wanted. I was like, "Oh," but I'm saying, "Yeah, but in my head, my mom is on the other side of this door. If I break it off the way I do when I'm playing basketball in the park with the boys, I'm going to get in trouble. But I want the role." And I ripped it. I mean, I had the mouth like a sailor. 11 years old, I'm blowing it off. Hardcore. And he was like, "Yeah, loved it." So I leave now and I said, "Sorry, Mom." She said, "I heard you in there." I said, "I know." I know. And she says, "That's okay. It was right for what you needed to do. You did good." I was like, "Oh."
Lots of casting directors were holding lives. I mean, I had timers set on my phone. I listened to so many lives. And so now, like, I see on social media and casting directors will always say, if we don't know you, don't hound us to call you in. And it amazes me that actors will, a casting director might post something, "I'm right for this, but bring me in." It's like, no, please don't do that. Because it's like there's that fine line in, yes, let them know. If they know who you are, you might be able to send them like a nice little DM, but you can't bombard them and to make them where they don't want to call you in. Because there were tons of casting directors that would say there's so many desperate actors, and they, you know, they don't mean to talk down, but they're like, they'll badger us, and that is just going to make them not call you in. Like sending a note, sending a fake, you know, commenting on their post, but having it be relevant to the post is very different than please hire me. You know, there's etiquette, and there's that line where you just go, oh, please don't do that.
How can the actor deal with feedback, good and bad? And how does it help their podcast grow?
So one thing I always say, and this is just in life in general, take what you need, leave what you don't. So when we receive feedback, even though it may hurt, I want you to ask yourself, is it true? And if it's true, then take it into account on how you can correct that, on how you can solve that problem for yourself, on how you can be the problem solver for the only problem that you're creating and that people are pointing out to you. Take what you need and leave what you don't, because there's always going to be trolls who are going to be like, I don't like your voice, or I don't like how y'all wore burgundy and pink. I think you should have worn purple and orange. You know, there's always going to be people who are opinionated, and their opinions may not be warranted. But if you can take what you need from what it is that they shared, and maybe it's because they don't like the fact that we wore purple and pink because maybe my background was pink and I blend into it. That could be something that I can take into account and then literally look at it and see if it's true, and then change and just shift from there. Because everyone's going to try to tell you how to do something, but they're not going to always show up and do it. And so it's better for you to be more consistent than for you to stop doing one thing because somebody hurt your feelings.
For a long time, I did makeup and wig design for theater. But like acting and breaking into theater and to film and TV, there was the secrecy around it for so long. And unless you knew somebody who knew something, that you weren't able to. So when I have a channel like yours or some of the other channels that I watch, I'm just like, thank you for sharing the insider scoop. That's what I need. I needed like some direction. I live in a small town in Arizona. I'm not privy to a lot of that information. So I think the biggest impact to me with the social media, things like YouTube, is exposure to that type of knowledge, because everything was secret. I feel that everything was a secret so long. Just techniques with hair and makeup, it was such a secret for such a long time. You were just like, how do you get the perfect cat eye, or how do you do contouring like this, and all those things. So as you can see behind me, all of these books that I have purchased that helped me with acting, that's helped me with learning how to do wig design and makeup design and that type of thing. But you know, a lot of times you feel siloed, where you're just like, when you're in a small town, you feel siloed where you're just like, is this technique the right technique? So branching out has been one of the best advice that I can give. There's no reason for anyone to do it on their own. There's so much information now available. And if you listen, if you take notes, if you glean information from this person, a little information from here, a little information from here, I think you can start your path. And that's what I've done.
Before, there was this group of men in this room back in 1956, and they were working on AI and what does this look like, right? But now you fast forward to 2024, there are just more rooms and pockets of people that are distributed around the world now working on AI. So this is a time we have open access. I have this continuum that I use, and it goes from access all the way to addiction. So we have open access for when ChatGPT came out. It's no longer with the people that were in the room in 1956, but now it's open access. And then there's this adoption phase where I'm learning this feels right, I understand it. And then there's an acceleration phase where you say, I use this to power my life and business. This is good. And then the healthy addiction phase. That's where I think you are right now. You're like, give me more, give me more. I want to learn more AI. So I wanted to put that in there because you are so right. We have been using it since way back in 1956. But to your point, Siri on our phones and Alexa and the things that we use, and see, Siri is answering me right now on my phone, right? AI has always been here. It's just our adoption of it.
I was taught in the strictest terms the difference in right and wrong. And I was taught in the strictest terms, learn at home or you learn it in the streets. I was taught in the strictest terms, speak only when asked. Some of those parables actually, follow me through my life, and especially being an executive, because I learned to listen. And most people don't do that, don't have the patience to listen. You need to listen to people before you speak. Evaluate what's being told to you and then how you can apply it, as opposed to, trying to be competitive and here's my idea. This is the way that I would do it.
One of the things that I think is so important for actors when it comes to being an entrepreneur is, one, you can't just see yourself as an actor or an actress. You have to see yourself as a business. You have to see your person. You have to see your social media presence. You have to see how you carry yourself, what you do on a daily basis. You have to operate as a business, but then also you have to participate in your own rescue. You can't wait around for, like you said, somebody to hand you things. It doesn't work that way, right? We have to sit here and I know there's been many nights where my husband's not coming home from set until 2:00 in the morning just for an extra role. But guess what? Those extra roles, they pile up, they compound. But there are people out there, there are actors and actresses out there that I know, they feel like, I don't want an extra role. I want the role. I want to be main stage, front and center with all the lines. Well, you got to start somewhere. And that starts with participating in your own rescue.
For me, feminism is the co-equal status that women have with men, with all the privileges that a society offers, that a republic offers, and that a democracy puts in place through its laws and its legislative actions that guide us. So for me, feminism is being authentic, is being as interesting as men can be, because men have a private persona and a public persona. And I think that women don't realize that they have that flexibility too. I mean, I have often been told that I'm dangerous because most people try to size you up immediately by the way you're dressed, the way you present yourself, which is part of it. And from your creative background, Lydia, that presentation is critically important. And presentation tends to really signal to everyone what your politics may be, what your lifestyle may be, et cetera, et cetera. So being a feminist for me is having co-equal status in this society. And that includes being able to be authentic, to be glamorous if I choose to, not to be glamorous if I choose to, but always when I come to the table, to have my capabilities front and center, my skill sets front and center, and my ability to communicate front and center.
I've always known that you always have to be ready. At whatever moment somebody will knock on that door, or you'll bump into someone, and then you will say yes, and then it will happen. But you have to prepare yourself. Like you were saying, people don't have that desire to excel. And I'm may I say I'm going to be 64.
Ooh, I love it. Go ahead.
And I'm still the same 18-year-old kid. I still feel like I haven't even gotten started. And I'm supremely curious, and I want to make connections, and and do all of those things that it seems like people lack now in society. Like you were saying, there is no desire to do more, to go the extra mile, to put in the time. You mentioned the word servant. That is a very important word. Like I'm a servant. There's nothing wrong with being a servant. Providing that for others. Because it always comes back.
We live in kind of a celebrity driven world, right? And if our expectations are to be a celebrity, like, of course you're not going to succeed. There's like 1 in a million that succeeds at the level of celebrity. And yet that's the only people we see succeeding most of the time. So like hardly anyone at the Marsh is going to succeed to the level of what I call Hollywood or whatever you want to call it. But why is, rethinking that instead of that, if that's your goal, that's kind of like a goal of becoming a gold medalist, which actually you have more control over than becoming a Hollywood success story, right? Becoming a gold medalist if you're skilled. You have more control over that, even than Hollywood, right? So, I would suggest that you look at how you feel about that and maybe just let go of that.
There I was with Teatro de la Esperanza, the second most important Chicano theater company after Teatro Campesino. And I just happened to be part of the show that they were taking down there. And because I had declared that I wanted to do theater, but only if it was, political. And Luis Valdez, when I encountered him, taught me that that could be possible. So there I was in Nicaragua. And I am looking at the reality of like, what are we doing here at this cultural festival? There's a revolution. There are bombs. There are planes, flag. What is this? So I had to open my eyes, and just really kind of take it all in. When I came back, because I had gotten 2 professors to agree that I would do independent studies for that semester. And so I had to give my talk in the political science department and in the theater department as well. So it was from 2 different perspectives. But I wrote for my essay for the, detailing my trip. One of my professors and mentors said, if we had submitted this, to the Pulitzer Prize, you would have won, because of the way that you are so sincere. You analyze, but you never hide away from you being there. It's all through you. And at the same time, you are applying all of the concepts that you have learned in your political science and power and the handling of this and that. But we never lose track of why this is important. And it's important because a human being is witnessing it. I think that was a moment when it's like, wow. I'm talking politics worldwide. Everybody's talking about this issue. Is it Reagan? Is it, the Sandinistas, this and that? But the way that he said to me, it mattered because it was your perspective. You put yourself in the middle of it. And that is what kept me interested all to the end, and I was like, okay, so my presence, my way of seeing things matters and will keep people to the end trying to understand what I'm trying to relay. So, and I think that I kind of apply that to everything that I try to do, that it's not like a way out there, rational, conceptual, blah, 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 blah. Bring it back to why it is important to human beings and to life on earth.
You and I have a similar experience of when an AD tells you to do something the director does not want, and then all of a sudden you're stuck between 2 people, and what you don't want is to get fired and make everybody happy. That is one awkward situation. And one of the photographs that I sent you when I was on the show Cold Case, when actor John Billingsley is leaving the scene, he's a free man, even though he should have been in jail. So the scene called for John to get up in a very slow, dramatic Hollywood noir fashion, leave the interrogation room, walk through the main booking area where we all are working as detectives, right? I have a white shirt with a haircut similar to this one. And the director looked at us all before this scene was shot. And he says, when Mr. Billingsley walks through, everyone is to look up and freeze frame as he continues to walk. Easy enough. They ring the bell, and before the boom guy says sound is rolling, the AD walks over to me and says, I need you, when he passes you, to turn your head the other way. I didn't know that the director wanted that one to be the martini shot, check the gate. He wanted to get the hell out of there. AD had different plans. So when I did that, it ruined. We had to stay another hour and a half because they now had to do the back shots of it. But the director came up to me full steam ahead, and just as I went like this, the AD jumped in.
I didn't care that it was raining. I didn't care that I didn't have a place to live overnights to get to the job. I didn't care. I knew that I had breath. That's a tool. My breath is my tool. I'm utilizing my breath as my tool to keep going, to keep pushing, to keep going. My lungs and shit is working. My heart's pumping. That's my tools. I'm going to keep going. That's waiting on them. You know, that's waiting on them. So, you know, I hear this all the time in business, and people make all these fucking excuses as to why they can't do it. Get away from them, because they are holding you back from your true potential. I'm where I'm at today because I didn't play that shit. And if people were on some I can't do it today, or people making excuses why they can't do something, to me, you lazy. You don't want to work. You don't want to do it. And oftentimes, there's a reason why there's a very small percentage of people in the industry that makes a living off of what they do. It's because they are for real about what they do, and they isolate everything else out. We ain't listening to that. You don't want to work, don't work. Go back to a 9 to 5. They ain't got shit to do with me.
Somatic healing inherently invites you in the sessions, when you explore that, to notice what's happening in your body as you explore, like what happened for you in your traumatic experience, so that when you give that example, present day, walking, you know, from feeling happiness and joy, and then walking into another room, and suddenly I feel terror or fear. It's a great question. At least the question I heard you ask is like, how can I know if that's my trauma coming up, or if it's my gut sense telling me that something's not right in here? And so that is a big part of the work. And that's a discerning process. And that's a clarity pathway, I would call it. So the more that I have been courageous enough and called to connect with the child I once was, and really feel and acknowledge the truth. So that means like what happened to me, what I made it mean, the emotions I felt, the repair present day with my inner child. It's the more familiar I am with what happens for me when that gets activated. And then that clarifies what's my gut sense, my intuition, you know, my felt sense about an environment. And to be real about it, and this is my experience as a human being and as a practitioner, I find that sometimes it can be a little blended. So it can be blended, and it absolutely is a practice and a process. So it's not necessarily something I immediately know. Like sometimes I have to take the time to be gentle with myself, and even step away or take a few breaths and take the time to find the clarity on it.
Any change that we make feels threatening. Even if my life is crap, it's my crap. I know where it goes. I have furniture that's specially made to fit the crap that I already have. If I get rid of that and get something new, I don't know how to handle that. So I will keep going back and putting up with the same crap. And because the idea of something new just feels uncomfortable in some way. Oh, if only there was some way to deal with that discomfort. There is. You deal with that discomfort and go, I can handle new levels of success. I can handle playing a different kind of role. I can handle meeting these different people. And so as we clear the stress around that, it's like, oh, yes, I can step into that and explore different possibilities.
During the writing, I was writing to give the performer side of me something to do. You know, I didn't really like auditioning and getting rejection after rejection. I understood that there's a volume of things that you're going to have to take, but I kept thinking, couldn't I do something, write an independent film, come up with a funny commercial, do something that I could start doing soon. So part of it was all of these jobs that I took were about creating work for myself. And I would say that now actors see it so much more often that they turn out to be very good writers or good directors or good producers because they've been involved in production or they've been observant of somebody who did a good job or communicated well with them. So I think a skill that people who weren't actors is knowing how to talk to other actors, to knowing where they're sensitive, to knowing where they're insecure, to know, I've had a number of times where I see an actor on soundstage who's like, oh, nobody's going to like me. I'm nervous. Whatever. And I go, no, you already have the job. Like, we cast you because you're an element that's very important to us and you know what you're doing and you do that well. I guarantee you that guy up on the boom mic is not nervous about what you're doing. He's nervous that the boom mic's going to drop into the shot. That guy at the camera is nervous that he's, got you framed up right. The guy behind him is nervous that the focus is correct. Like, everybody has a element of wanting to get it right for the team. And the truth is they're not thinking anything about you.
Coming from the background that I came from and the struggle to be a performer and to develop myself and develop my potential, performing and doing well academically were the two things that I did for myself that nobody could touch. No matter how crazy it was in the world, that I owned those spaces. And so to have felt like I had to throw up and not been able to perform on the stage, even though I got through the monologue, nobody knew, blah, 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 I was like, oh, shoot, I failed myself. And she said to me something to me that has stayed with me ever since. And she said, you're every age you've ever been. And I was like, wait, what? She said, you're every age you've ever been. And I promise you I stopped crying. And I said, okay, great. And she was like, what? I said, well, then all I have to do is choose to be the person that I was before that trauma happened. So I choose that person. That freed me. And this is the photo of me right before that traumatic experience. And I have on what I call my Michael Jackson socks. And my character was Snoopy from You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And that was the winning monologue that got me into performing arts. And so performing that was great and all the things. But that photo is full of confidence, expectation, joy. I am the queen of my domain. And that experience was just simply a trauma that I decided to hold on to too long. So while I don't perform and I really do enjoy being behind the scenes, if I am asked to step onto the stage, if I'm asked to do something else, I simply go, okay, I'm going to choose to be this version of myself and not the version that was about to throw up because both are available to me. I just prefer her.